На коліно своє полкове знамено,
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великой страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячий хотар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
О, бля! Игорь!
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 326 of the news, and it's good to see you all once again in the chat.
And of course, we're going to be reporting on the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, and today we've been seeing some interesting things, from the Prime Minister of Britain declaring that some challengers will be arriving in Ukraine today, and all the way to seeing the Wagner unit committing war crimes by wearing Ukrainian uniforms while attacking Ukrainian forces, trying to camouflage themselves amongst the ranks of the UA armed forces. But before we get into all of that, I would like to say that my voice is incredibly strained tonight, and I have been sucking on about 3 cough drops to try and get my voice to an acceptable level. So I'm sorry that it will be a little bit lower pitched tonight. I would try and make it a little bit better, but it is hurting. So with that, let's get right into the news, starting off in the United Kingdom with probably some of the more interesting news as far as the foreign support is concerned. We saw that the Russian embassy made a statement today about what the British have been doing as far as supporting Ukraine, and here is the following statement that came out from them. The United Kingdom seems to be intent on reaffirming its status as top NATO member state in terms of arming Kyiv and escalating the conflict. Those among the British public who are growing weary of warfare and harbor a desire for peace are in for a disappointment. One really cannot put out fire with petrol. Bringing tanks to the conflict zone, far from drawing hostilities to a close, will only serve to intensify combat operations, generating more casualties, including among the civilian population. Yet this, ironically, fully confirms to London's objectives of prolonging the conflict. It's very interesting to me, the wordage here, especially the part about including more casualties from the civilian population, because one thing we know for certain is that the Ukrainians do not kill citizens or civilians at all. And what this is indirectly saying is, if Britain sends these tanks, and they already have, the Russians will end up killing more civilians as a reprisal. That is exactly what this is saying, and this is the threat that the Russians gave to the Ukrainians indirectly today. Those tanks that you have now received, we're going to now try and keep this war going on longer. Y'all are going to fight against us harder, which will force us to continue to keep on grinding down our forces in this war, and we're going to try and make y'all pay for that if we can. And that is very sick to hear that they put this out in an NBC statement with this very workaround wordage, because that's what it's directly trying to say. It's trying to threaten the Ukrainians into thinking that because y'all are getting foreign support and y'all are being helped along to keep fighting this war as best you can, we're going to make y'all pay for it directly. So with that, we're going to be moving on from this threat, but I wanted this to be in y'all's minds, because that's what the Russians are saying in this letter, but the way it's written, it makes it sound as though the Russians are the ones aiming for peace, and only if the warmongering West would just stop sending these arms and support to Ukraine, maybe there would be peace among the land and people wouldn't be killed anymore. And that's what they're trying to word this as, but it's completely hidden under a thin veil of, we're war criminals pretty much, and if you keep on supporting something that's against our interests, we'll make sure that innocent people pay for what you're doing, is what they're saying. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from London, and we're now going to be moving on into Germany, into the small town outside of Dortmund called Soest, where we saw today a train carrying some interesting cargo, some M1A1 Abrams. An interesting shipment.
A very nice shipment, I must say.
I gotta say, and I'm looking at it, and they all look like... Let's see, we're getting a close-up look of them. They actually look like these may be... And everyone help me out with this if you can. They look like they may actually not be M1A1s. They might be M1A2s, because it looks like they have the IR, I guess you could say, sight over, I believe it's the gunner's hatch. The gunner or the loader's hatch that was added on to the M1A2s. So fairly interesting to see, and a lot of people are saying that they're in desert camo, and that is pretty interesting to see. They're still in their original desert camo. We can see that some of them even have markings and inscriptions on the barrel, so it looks like not a lot has been done to these tanks. They may be provided to Ukraine that way as is. We've seen a lot of M113s and Humvees get provided still in their original desert camo, so we're not really sure who these are going to right now. We do know that they're on the move. They could either be to reinforce American forces inside of Poland. They could be replacements for the Polish who are sending their Leopard 2s into Ukraine and need some kind of replacement to fill that armored gap. Or these could be being set up across the other side of the border for a potential armor package that we haven't really heard anything about. But we're going to let the video continue. And with that, that's the end of the clip. But once again, fairly interesting to see the kind of support that the Ukrainians may be getting, or the Polish may be getting. We're not really sure who. With that, it's now time for us to move into Russia and into Moscow, where we saw some S-400 air defenses on the outskirts of the town that pictures were taken of today. And we can see that this is somewhere in between, let's see, Losin Island and Sokolniki. So let's pull up Losin Island. Losin Island. Let's see where this is. So that's certainly not Losin Island, because that is in Malaysia.
Not.
So I would assume not. So we don't really know, based off of those locations, where exactly they are in Moscow. We would assume that they would be in the far perimeter, somewhere around the outer ring road here, or even further out into the great ring roads that we can see out here near Klin Ruza, Obninsk, and so on, to try and protect Moscow against potential attacks from Ukrainian drones. The Ukrainians are getting a little bit more brazen with their drone attacks, even attacking as far close to Moscow as Ryazan, which is only about 80 miles away from the outskirts of Moscow, which is very concerning for the Russians because it shows that the Ukrainians definitely have the ability to strike deep into Moscow at strategic targets. And so it looks like the Russians may be taking this seriously finally, and they're starting to attempt to set up S-400 SAM batteries around Moscow. Now, this is fairly interesting because there's only a certain amount of competent units in the Russian military that can field and operate these S-400 systems, and so the Russians, instead of sending these to the front lines in Ukraine to try and defend their forces from air attacks there, they're now going to be spreading out some of their most likely experienced forces that could be used elsewhere in Ukraine around their capital city for the potential of an air attack to occur. This is actually really beneficial for Ukraine because with this waste of resources and potential of these forces, the Ukrainians will be out of risk of being, I guess you could say, having a tougher time in the air with their drone forces because of the S-400s. So with that, we're now going to be moving out of Russia, but once again, interesting to see, they're starting to take the Ukrainian drone threat very seriously from what it seems, and we're now going to be moving down into Dnipro, into a somewhat unfortunate story. As y'all know, a massive Russian missile barrage occurred overnight. Once again, dozens of ballistic missiles were fired into Ukraine, and we got a video from the Black Sea showing one Russian frigate firing off its load of caliber missiles. We see the ship at sea here. You see it firing off its caliber missiles into Ukraine. We can see the missiles flying off into the distance and over the horizon down there. And as these missiles flew into Ukraine, the Ukrainian air defenses immediately began to engage these missiles. From what we were able to know, something around 80 to 90% of the missiles, according to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, were attempted to be shot down or shot down. However, one of these missiles on course to Dnipro was able to make it to its target, which apparently was a large Khrushchevka commie block left over from Soviet-era times, filled with residents that had no idea that a missile was going to be directed straight at their apartment flat that night. The missile slammed into the direct side of the building, exploding, and causing the building to cave. You can hear the explosion of the missile right there. And in the distance, we can see the smoke rising as the Khrushchevka apartment block immediately collapsed, trapping dozens of people inside of the rubble and killing several immediately. Out of the dozens of people that were caught within this explosion, a large amount of them were children. Moving on into our next clip from this video in Dnipro, the damage was immediately seen, and the aftermath was terrible, to say the least. Unfortunately, I cannot show you all this clip because while I was able to look at it earlier and it did not have an NSFW marking on it, it now has an NSFW marking on it, meaning that this may be a little bit too graphic to show to y'all, but if y'all do want to see it, the link is in the description below to the map that has this link on it, so that y'all can see what the aftermath of this attack looked like. Moving on to our next clip, we also got another video of the attack on Dnipro and what was caused to this apartment block. Of course, courtesy to Radio Free Europe for providing us a insight on what happened here and the tragedy that has occurred once again due to another Russian war crime. You see the building still billowing with smoke as Ukrainian firefighters and ambulances race to the scene to try and save and find as many people as possible before they succumb to their injuries inside of the rubble. You see right here a Ukrainian car, or the Radio Free Europe car, chasing down the firefighters as they make their way to the scene. And we can see that the entirety of the building, several floors, around 7 of them, have completely collapsed and fallen onto the first 2 floors, causing a massive pile of rubble. And once again, from what we know, all of the apartment blocks within this destroyed area were filled with citizens. We can see citizens gathering together to attempt to clear the rubble and find people found inside of it, as the firefighters continue to try and make sure that no fires begin in the rubble, and also to help with the evacuation of the people as well. That's the end of the clip.
You know, if Russia is truly winning the war like they want to tell everybody that they're doing, why would you resort to attacking civilians like so brutally like this?
That's a great question, and the fact of the matter is that, along with the threat that they sent to the London embassy today, it is very clear that this is the way that the Russians view a reprisal. It's a direct attack upon innocent people. These people, as far as anyone's concerned, haven't done anything in support or condemnation of this war in either direction. These people are just existing and living their lives out, and they happen to be in the country that Russia's at war with, but beyond that, they're not doing anything to really cause anyone any harm. Yet the Russians will spend several $1 million on a caliber missile and fire that thing off with the sole intent of attacking people like those in this apartment complex and killing off dozens of them, or at least having the attempt of killing off dozens of them. And it's sickening to think about. It really is, because these people are just like us, you know, Matthew, you and me. They're just sitting in their house, they're sitting in their apartments, they're doing their thing, they're living their lives, and all of a sudden, because the Russians are losing a war that is several dozen miles away from them, entirely due to their own incompetence, the war was started on their own volition, they're going to take it out on people who have really nothing to do with the outcome and the goings-on of the front line in this war. It's
really, how is this even going to help Russia in any way? Because this really doesn't like directly relate to the frontline fighting. And what is really like the point from a strategic sense? The point is, and we can look through history, because this is actually a bit of a barbaric tactic that was actually used by really everyone in the Second World War. And I will use the Nazi Germans as the example right here. During the Blitz, we saw that the Nazi Germans began to bomb London indiscriminately, hitting anything and everything that they could, and trying to wipe out as many British citizens within London as possible. Out of the Blitz, I believe something like 40,000 British citizens were killed, and it was entirely because Germany was trying to make the British regret ever having gone to war with Germany, and also trying to beat them into submission by freaking out the public and making them scared of another German bomber flying overhead that may have a bomb with their name on it. And that was the exact kind of reasoning that the Germans used, and I think that's the exact kind of reasoning that the Russians use. They're trying to send the message to the Ukrainians that if you even stand up against us, your families may be the next people under this pile of rubble. You may be the next one under this pile of rubble, and your life will be extinguished within a second if you don't kneel down and accept Russian control of your country and become a slave to our ambitions and our wishes. And that's really what they're trying to get across in this missile attack. It's really sick, and I see some people saying genocide, and you know, that's a pretty big standard to meet. But I've got to say that when you see things like this that really don't add up and really don't make much sense, you start thinking that might be what they're trying to do here, is just wipe out a group of people. It is. That's entirely their point, is to wipe out a group of people. We can even see that with what the Russians are doing now. Like during the Holodomor and during Stalin's reign in the Soviet Union, the Soviets dispersed the Ukrainians and their culture across Russia to try and water it down and bring it into extinction.
to completely wipe the Ukrainians off the earth and make Ukraine just another part of Russia. And that was their plan. And we can see they're even doing that now in occupied territories. They're taking Ukrainian children and deporting them out of their homeland, away from their families, and into Russia, into faraway places in the middle of the Far East, in the middle of the Urals, so that way there's nothing around them that's familiar, and they're hoping that these kids will grow up and eventually forget their entire Ukrainian heritage and commit cultural genocide against them. And not only that, to the rest of the Ukrainians still alive in Ukraine, they're trying to commit a genocide against them. The entire thing is sickening. It's sickening to the core, and I feel, and this is why I feel really no sympathy for any Russian soldier at this point. These Russian soldiers know that this is going on. Some of them are not, of course, directly involved in these cruise missile attacks, but they are committing small-end atrocities on a person-to-person basis every single day in occupied areas. Chechen soldiers are violating women. They're also violating other Russian soldiers. They're killing each other. The Wagner unit is committing war crimes. They're dressing up in uniforms of the Ukrainians, wearing very small white armbands, and that'll actually be something we'll add on to in the Soledar story a little bit later on. And everything from top to bottom is nothing but war crimes and attempts at genocide against the Ukrainians at this point. And the war didn't start off like this. I'll say that. In the first few days of this war, the Russians were actually incredibly reserved because they thought, oh, you know, we'll win this thing in a few days. It'll be over. But after that fourth day came, and they saw that the Ukrainians actually stopped them outside of Kyiv, right in the Hostomel area, they said, let's just open the floodgates and let's just start bombarding citizens and soldiers alike. Whatever we can see, whatever is within the distance of our guns will be reduced to a flattened heap on the ground. And that's what they did.
It's just really sick. It's very sick.
It is. It's sickening. And so that's all of the news we have from the Dnipro area. Of course, as more news comes out, we will report on it. And it appears, unfortunately, that the number of deaths is continuing to climb, even as the stream was going on. While I was making the news earlier, it was reported that several people had died. Now it's reported that somewhere around a dozen people have died. And as they continue to clear the rubble and find more people, that number will only rise. And serves as an example of what the Russians really want to do to the Ukrainian people. With that, we're going to be moving on from this little clip and that news from Dnipro, the unfortunate incident that occurred there, and we're now going to be moving over to Kryvyi Rih. Kryvyi Rih also had a similar incident occur today within its city, and this one, fortunately, in a way, it is somewhat fortunate that while the missile did hit and kill people, it only killed one person, unlike the attack in Dnipro that killed probably dozens by the time they pull the last body out of the rubble. We can see a picture right here of the damage. Fortunately, instead of hitting a urban area with Khrushchevka blocks in it, it hit some kind of an outskirt in Kryvyi Rih, destroying a small house and, of course, killing the one person. It's once again, very unfortunate to hear that the one person died, but when seeing what happened in Dnipro, one has to count the blessings that these Ukrainians had in Kryvyi Rih, that this missile was not able to hit a target inside of the urban center and was only hitting one of the suburbs outside of Kryvyi Rih. But it still doesn't negate the fact that, once again, while the number may be smaller here, it is another war crime and another Russian attempt to try and kill off the Ukrainian civil population. And I think that the Russians should pay for this dearly. And I'm really tired of mincing words and acting like there's supposed to be some kind of a high ground here. The Russians are committing war crimes on an unbelievable basis every single day, and we're seeing missile attacks. Those are usually when it's brought up, but this is I can't even go into detail about what I've seen. The unbelievable things I've seen the Russians do: gunning down prisoners, killing off normal citizens, looting their homes, leaving them with nothing in the middle of the winter to freeze to death inside of a shell of a house. These people are the worst thing that I've ever seen. They have to be the modern equivalent of Nazi Germany at this point. And that's not even an understatement. If they took over the entirety of Ukraine, the atrocities they would commit would probably make what the Germans did to the Ukrainians, and also a lot of the people inside of Poland, look like it was nothing but light work for what the Russians are looking like they want to do inside of Ukraine right now. And who knows what we'll see once the Ukrainian forces finally make it to cities like Mariupol, which have tens of thousands that we've already seen on satellite being buried on the outskirts of the town because they've either been killed by Russian war crimes or killed just due to the poor conditions that the Russians are forcing these people to live in. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from this news as well, and on up towards our location unknowns, because we do have some good news today. The Russians did get obliterated in several clips, which is, of course, good to know because with each Russian soldier that gets obliterated, this war will hopefully be coming to an end a little bit sooner. Maybe just a second sooner, maybe just a minute sooner for each Russian soldier, but each one is nailing another coffin, well, putting a nail in the coffin of Russian defeat. With that, we're going to be moving on into this first clip where we saw a Russian tank get hit by a drone, which appears to have made the tank retreat. We can see the T-72B right here. We can see the bomblet dropped on top, and it appears to have hit directly on top of the turret. We're not really sure if this has caused any kind of spalling within the cab. We can see that it landed right over the gunner's hatch, and the gunner fired the gun, and the tank started to reverse. So we're not really sure if the crew was knocked out, but the bomblet dropping on top of it did force the tank to withdraw from the area, which is at least good in its own right, and hopefully the Ukrainians can locate some kind of anti-tank unit to take this thing out a little bit later. With that, we're now going to be moving on into the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we also saw a pretty cute cat, because I had to include this one today, because considering all of the terrible news that we heard from Dnipro, I wanted to try and alleviate that a little bit, so we got a pretty cute little video of a Ukrainian soldier playing around with a kitten while he's trying to operate, I'm guessing, a drone. So here's the video. We see the little cat down there. They want some petting.
Ты помічник,
The Ukrainian's like, would you like to help?
красунчик. Ну давай тільки без рук. Ну ладно. Давай так сидіть. Мені тільки трішки погано видно.
Very nice cat. It's a very cute cat, and it's always good to know that Ukrainian soldiers out there on the front line are able to get little friends like that, because you know that does a lot for their morale, Matthew, to have a little pet with them that travels around with them and they can play with and pet and probably relieve some stress by just doing something fun with a little cat. And also, it looks like it's trying to help them out. And so with that, we're going to be moving on to the next clip of news, where we also saw a little boy trying to help raise support. And I've got to give a lot of credit to some of these, actually all the kids that do this inside of Ukraine, because they are, they have a little bit of an idea what's going on. Of course, kids don't really know the true reality and the true situation of what's going on, but it's the thought that counts, and these kids are doing a lot. This boy is in the streets singing carols, and he's also getting donations from passerbys to help out soldiers on the front line. And so here's the clip of the boy out there on the street doing his part.
Ты мне даешь? Куда? Для чего? Ну, братик, ну ты шо, ну все нормально, все будет. Это ты калидовал, щедровал? Да. Зайка, ну ты шо, ну ты, я сейчас дядя Тёма заплачет уже. Нет, котик, нет. Все, конфеты купишь себе, понял? И игрушку. Мы все справимся. Я тебе обещаю справиться. За нами перемога? Да. Блин.
We can see the guy getting a pretty good laugh out of the little boy doing what he's doing. And with that, that's the end of the clip. And it's good to know that the kids out there trying to raise support somehow, some way, and hopefully that support will make it to some soldiers in the Bakhmut area, so that way they can get themselves some new boots, maybe some new implements on their uniform, because the Bakhmut area is an absolute hellhole right now. And of course, we'll get into that a little bit later once we get into that part of the front line. With that, we're now moving on into the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we also saw the Russian losses. The Russian losses today have been somewhat significant, not in troop numbers, but in vehicle numbers. We saw that 530 Russian troops have been killed by the end of the day, with probably around 1,100 to 1,200 wounded. We can only take an assumption at how many wounded Russian soldiers there are, as there's really no way to account for how many wounded there really are. There's no clear ratio, although a general idea is somewhere for every killed, there are 2 to 3 wounded. Moving on into our next bit of the losses, we saw that the Russians did lose 6 armored personnel carriers today, which is a somewhat high number. We also saw that 13 supply trucks have been destroyed, which is one of the higher numbers that we've seen over about the past month. So once again, very nice to see that they were able to knock out 13 supply trucks. We also saw that they knocked out 6 tanks, nearly an entire battalion tactical group's worth of armored vehicles, 4 artillery systems, 2 drones, and 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and also 2 Bobcat skid steers.
Bobcats in one day. This is tremendous.
And the Ukrainians are really giving it to the skid steers, considering that 186 of those have been destroyed in the entirety of the war, and the chances of them ever really being around is really something. And so it's good to know that they're getting those things one after the other, little by little. Maybe one day the Russians will run out of skid steers and they won't be able to build anything else that is fairly stupid, to say the least. And so with that, Once again,
Or I guess you could say dig their own graves.
yeah, maybe that will be. Well, actually, that might be a bit of a problem because then the Russians won't be able to fertilize the fields as well as they do right now. So we might want to actually.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
We might want to actually allow the Russians to have the skid steer, so that way at least they can help out with the fertilizing operation, or as we call it, the spécial fertilisation operation, or whatever they call it. Anyways, we're going to be moving on from the Russian losses and into our last bit of location unknown news, where we saw a Ukrainian pilot hopping in. This is a MiG-29, and we can see that it has a R-73. It also, well, it does have some R-73 arches on it, and it also has some radar missiles. I forgot the exact name of these, but we can also see that there's a load of frost on this MiG-29 as this pilot climbs in for his flight over the skies of Ukraine. It cannot be stated the bravery of Ukrainian pilots to take to the skies, especially during the earlier part of this war, considering that the Russian Air Force was in full swing at that point and outnumbered the Ukrainians nearly 5-1 in the skies, but the Ukrainians still took off in their fighter aircraft, heavily outnumbered, and were able to inflict some well-earned losses on the Russians at the very start of this war. Nowadays, a lot of the Ukrainian Air Force's activities are shooting down ballistic and cruise missiles flying into their country, and also trying to find drones and shoot those down as well before they make it to their target. We also see that some aircraft like Su-25s and Su-24s provide vital frontline support in some areas that need it, where the artillery just can't cut the job. But this guy, you got to give him a lot of credit, because me personally, I don't know if I've ever told y'all this, but I am deathly scared of getting an aircraft whenever there's any ice on them. If y'all have ever watched air disasters, y'all will know that most of the disasters occur in winter because of some kind of a de-icing issue, and this always scares the hell out of me. And you got to give it to this Ukrainian pilot who not only has to face down death almost every single day in the skies over Ukraine, but he's also going to face down my worst fear concerning aircraft, which is ice buildup on the wings. With that, we're now going to be moving on from this little bit of location unknown news and a very nice picture, and we're now going to be moving on to the front lines themselves, where we've actually seen a large amount of developments in the Bakhmut area, and also some developments further up near the area of Nizhnya Divanka, where we saw today some Russians getting hit. And so with that, here's the clip, and while this clip plays, I'm going to be right back. Now, I gotta say, the music was kind of a little weird, and I think we are probably going to get content ID for that. I didn't really hear much of it, but I heard enough of it to be like, huh, it's kind of interesting. I see some people actually
I was wondering why I wasn't muted before you went away, but there we go.
Yeah, there we go. In case y'all didn't know, we have this giant like light boom thing near my desk, which there's like a bathroom like right there, but it's in the way of the door. So I got up and then I realized that, and so I had to go try and run to another restroom as fast as I could. So anyways, getting that information out of the way, we're now going to be moving on from this clip where we saw that the Russians did get blitzed, and we're now going to be moving on further down the line and into the Svatova area where we saw the Azov unit at the front lines. And we can see that, of course, the trench conditions are somewhat poor, but the soldiers of the Azov are continuing to defend their positions and try and hold them off from the Russians. Right now, the Ukrainians are not committing any kind of offensive activity in most areas of Ukraine, and they are largely waiting and biding their time either until an offensive is able to coalesce itself or until the Russian offensive in the Bakhmut area stops. And we see here in this last picture, once again, the Azov soldiers at the front line. And I have to say that it's really something to take a look at these trenches. And we've said it many times, and I cannot say it enough. These look just like trenches of the First World War. We're now going to be moving on into our next clip of news, further down from the Svatove area and moving on into Kremenna, where we saw today that the Ukrainians fired off an MLRS for Dnipro and what had happened there, and the war crimes and the slaughter of innocent civilians.
А ось іще 5 полетіло. Охрененькі.
Hopefully those missiles were able to find their way to a Russian soldier and make sure that he remembers what this war is really about, which is making the Russians pay for even trying to enter the country at all. We're now going to be moving on into our next clip from the Kremenna area, where we also saw that a Russian soldier got hit and may have gotten a little bit of shrapnel in his rear end, or as they call it, the ass. And so here's the video. You see right there, it looks like something bit him, in the words of Forrest Gump, and it now looks like he's trying to crawl into a small lean-to. We now see him crawling out again, and it looks like he's trying to contemplate what to do about his shattered bottom. He's now crawling down the line and into the next lean-to, where the other Russian will most likely give him some massage to his rear end. If it's a Kadyrevite, he may have to be very concerned about what that massage may entail.
Oh. That guy laughed when I did that.
Yeah, he did. He heard you all the way through time and space. He was like, yeah, that's a pretty good. And so with that's the end of that clip, but very nice to see the Ukrainians are using the bomblets to harass the Russian forces in that area and making sure that they also get, as this caption calls it, an ass full of shrapnel. And I gotta say, what better way to word it? I mean, like, that is actually the most apt description of what happened here. We're now going to be moving on outside of the Kremenna area and further on down into the further on down the line, and of course into Bakhmut and Soledar. We're about to be entering some pretty interesting news here in a second. We're going to be seeing all kinds of things that basically you just can't explain without seeing them. And one of those very interesting things that I've been seeing indicated every once in a while, but we've been able to get actual confirmation on today, is that the Wagner unit is committing a war crime. If those of y'all who do not know what the rules of war and the Geneva Convention entails, the Geneva Convention itself explicitly states that camouflaging your forces as enemy forces to cause some kind of deception is a violation of the rules of war as well as the Geneva Convention and is a war crime. Those who are found doing such a thing under the rules of the Geneva Convention are allowed to be executed on sight if they are captured. Because this is one of the most blatant and sickest forms of war crime there is, to try and deceive enemy forces by camouflaging yourself as them. Before we get into that clip and all of the news surrounding the Soledar, Bakhmut, and Klishkivka areas of the Battle of Bakhmut, we're going to be covering some polls, because Matthew's been putting up some fairly interesting ones tonight, and I've been seeing that the responses have also been fairly interesting as well. And so, with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so we have 2 polls to go over, and the very first one said, considering Russians deploying defenses, do you think Ukraine is preparing to attack Moscow? It looks like 56% said no, it's probably for propaganda. 25% said yes, Ukraine is probably preparing to do so, and 19% said unsure. Now, with this, I'm not quite sure, because that would be quite a bold move for Ukraine to strike directly into Moscow. As we've seen, that's something Moscow has decided that they're going to hold off on doing in Kyiv as well. I'm not exactly sure, honestly, why. I know it would escalate things, but the Russians seem to have no bounds anyway, so I'm not sure why that's, a big barrier for them. But I really don't know, so I'm going to have to say unsure. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that the deployment of air defenses such as the S-400 around Moscow do show that they are now seeing that the capital city may be under threat of some kind of a drone attack or some kind of a cruise missile barrage. Considering that we haven't seen those kinds of air defenses being activated around Moscow until recently, of course, smaller air defenses have been active the entire time around Moscow. And not only that, Moscow also has a defensive ring of nuclear missiles because that was allowed under one of the nuclear armament treaties of yesteryear. But We've never seen S-400s being deployed around the city until now, and this is one of the first pictures indicating such a thing, which shows, and of course the only logical answer to this, is that the Russians are getting afraid of some kind of a attack by the Ukrainians on strategic military infrastructure within Moscow. Something that's very convenient about Russia is that there are no developed places inside of the entirety of their nation except for two cities, Moscow and St. Petersburg. And interestingly enough, Matthew, these cities, as I was reading a little while ago, don't really bode well with each other historically. In fact, they're considered rivals by each other.
Really?
Yeah, in the 1950s, Stalin, who considered himself and his inner circle Muscovites, actually created something called the Leningrad Affair, which is where they came up with trumped-up charges to get anyone associated with the city of St. Petersburg executed or exiled to Siberia, so that way they wouldn't pose a political threat any longer to the people, well, I guess you could say to the guys in charge that considered themselves the people of Moscow. Very, very interesting history and a story, because during the Second World War, in case if you don't know, Matthew, here's a little bit of interesting history for everyone, really. The city of Leningrad, which is now called St. Petersburg, was completely surrounded by both the Finns from the north, who got involved in the war on the German side, and also the Nazi Germans to the south of the city. This created the Siege of Leningrad, which went on for literal years. Leningrad, I believe, was besieged all the way from 1941 to 1943. But let me make sure. Siege of Leningrad. And let me make sure I'm correct on those dates. And actually, it was 1941 to 1944. So almost an entire let me think, no, more like 3 years. And when you think about that, that's absolutely amazing that a city could survive 3 years of siege in the modern world. But not only that, the siege of Leningrad, and after the siege was lifted, created a load of folk heroes amongst the Soviet Union, the city officials and leaders that were able to keep the city intact for 3 solid years of siege. And these people, after the war, were viewed by a threat by Stalin. Stalin viewed these people as a potential threat to his own power because they were so popular that they may be able to leverage that to their favor to maybe put themselves in charge of important positions. And so he created this thing called the Leningrad Affair. And, I've already gone over that. He pretty much was saying, oh my God, these guys are nationalists. They're scary as hell. They're crazy. And I think in the end, it was something like thousands of St. Petersburg officials were arrested and executed by the end of it. And it's absolutely crazy to see, because that was a Russian eating Russian situation. Russians were eating each other and eating themselves to try and stay in power. Not only were they doing horrific things to the Ukrainians during Stalin's reign, they were also doing horrific things to each other in this vie for power and the fear of people actually doing what they want and showing their own individuality in a way.
Was this the time they were also like actually eating the rubles, like the currency?
They were eating wall paste in Leningrad, yes, and I think there was a couple of accounts of people trying to eat money. I like paper rubles. I think there was, but wall paste was the most common form of nutrition in Leningrad during the siege. Is that they would make wall paste soup. But I hope that explains.
That sounds tasty.
That sounds great. I mean, I'm sure that all the lead in the wall paste was really making it extra delicious and extra spicy, and probably led to the mental deficiencies that the Russians have today. But moving on from that, It's a story that kind of repeats itself over and over, though, is that these areas are the only developed ones, and they pretty much fight each other. And to see that they're now going to start defending one, that shows that it's got to be under threat. So with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well. And let's get on into the next one.
All right, and the next poll said, is this war turning into a full-scale Russian-perpetrated genocide? It looks like the overwhelming majority falls within the 77% that said, yes, this is a genocide. 11% said somewhat but not completely. 9% said no, this is bad but not a genocide. And 3% said unsure. Now, I'll have to admit, I'm not exactly sure if it qualifies for a genocide according to, I guess, the international legal definition. But to me, it certainly appears to be one, because they're attacking civilians on a widespread scale with no apparent regard for life whatsoever. And they've also expressed a lot of, I guess, it's not racist, but I don't know really what to call it, but a lot of bad statements toward Ukrainian people in general as a race. So Enforcer, what say you?
I would say it is a genocide. The Russians have completely dehumanized the Ukrainians into being animals, pretty much, according to modern Russian opinion. And in the process, they've started to commit atrocities against them that are absolutely unbelievable. And this isn't anything new. The Russians throughout history have thought of the Ukrainians as third-class people, or not people at all. And that's how they've treated them whenever they've been under Russian control. So I would say that, yes, they are trying to commit a genocide against the Ukrainians, and they're trying to carry out the thing that they've been attempting to do for hundreds of years, but they've never been able to do as successfully. You can go throughout pretty much any area that Russia's ever been in. They have tried to ethnically cleanse anywhere they've been. You can look at the Circassians of the Caucasus mountain range in the 1850s. You can go to Kazakhstan and look what they did to the native Kazakhs on their own land. You can go anywhere. You can even go to the Far East in Siberia and see what they did to all of the people of Tuvan or Mongol descent that lived out here in the plains. And it's just what they do. They do this to everyone everywhere, and so it's not completely unbelievable, especially with the historical precedent, that the Russians would be attempting a genocide against the Ukrainians wherever possible. And if they took over the entire country, I'm sure we would see that the Ukrainian culture would just eventually die and be wiped off the face of the earth, and anyone that would try and keep it alive would face a sudden death by falling out of a window or just disappearing into the oblivion. So with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And we're going to be moving on into, well, the poll fairly well. And we're now going to be moving on into the next one, if we have another poll.
All right, so that was our last poll for now. So, of course, we got to answer our first 3 questions from the Super Chats. And up first, we have a $100 donation from Enforcer for President. And thank you very much for the support.
Yeah, thank you so
Who
much.
says, yes, indeed. And take a question from the LSA. Thank you guys so much. And slam that like button, number 307.
And I got to thank you so much for the support, Enforcer for President. And we will take a question from the chat here in a minute. But I would like to thank you so much once again, Enforcer for President, for being one of our biggest supporters and also one of the people who helps this channel to keep running the most. We rely on y'all's support to survive, and no pressure. I don't mean to put any pressure on y'all or anything, but we do. And it means a lot to us that y'all are so generous with y'all's support to us and help us to keep alive behind the scenes, because if it wasn't for y'all, like you, Enforcer for President, that support this channel, we wouldn't be able to keep running. It's been a complete miracle to me that we've been able to keep this thing going for 326 days, and it's been entirely due to y'all's kind generosity and helping us to keep this thing running. And not only has y'all's kind generosity helped us to keep going, but it saved the lives of thousands of Ukrainians. Ukrainians have been fed meals that they would have never eaten before thanks to the Lee Spring Army. They've been given shelter when there wouldn't have been any shelter for them. They've been given countless things, and y'all's generosity has been completely boundless and endless, not only to our channel and helping us to survive here to keep covering the war, but also to the Ukrainians as well. And so I got to thank you so much once again, Enforcer for President, for supporting us and helping us to keep this thing going so that we can keep on reporting on the good fight that's going on in Ukraine. And also, if y'all can, like Enforcer for President said, please make sure to hit that like button, because this helps this channel to spread, it helps the Lee Spring Army to grow, and it helps our message to get on out there to even more people. I would say really the best thing to do, the best reason to hit the like button would be to spite the bots, because once you hit that like button, and the longer you watch this channel, YouTube gets the message that people really do enjoy this, and that they want to see more of it, and that more people should see it. And so more and more of the Enforcer and a lot of pro-Ukrainian channels get pushed out there on YouTube, and the Russian bots just start rolling in their soon-to-be graves, because they sit there and they go, oh my god, why in the hell are they getting so much traction? Why in the world do people care so much? We've been trying to sow seeds of dissent, seeds of distrust. We've been trying to turn people away from the war, but we haven't been able to succeed at all. And so if y'all like to spite the bots, make sure to push the like button, because it allows us and the bots to see us and let them know that we're still running 326 days in without a sign of stopping. And so with that, let's get to that live chat question.
All right, and the live chat question goes to Frequency Harmonic, who says, Enforcer, I really feel you're putting too much faith in Russian casualties. It's clear by now that the Kremlin has no care how many they lose. The goal is Donbass at any cost, military or civilian. What are your thoughts?
And I would say that's a pretty good point, Portstan, but I put a lot of faith into casualty counts, because casualty counts show how much longer a war can go on. They may say at all costs, but let's say this. I'm going to buy a hammer at Lowe's at all costs, and I have $100. and I go to Lowe's and the hammer's $150. It doesn't matter how much of a can-do attitude and a go-get-'em kind of mindset I've got to get that hammer. No matter my all-cost mindset, I don't have enough cost to expend to be able to get that hammer. And that's the exact situation the Russians are finding themselves in right now. They're always saying, no matter the cost, we'll keep it going. We won't stop. We're always going to take it. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of years. We'll just pump as many guys as we can into that area. We don't care how many of them will die. We'll take it. But they're going to run out of experienced soldiers. They're already running out of experienced soldiers. They're running out of war supplies. We saw Putin admit that yesterday by telling the guy in charge of, I guess you could say, the Russian war industry, that no orders have been fulfilled at all. They need to step this up. There's nothing for the Russians to really fight with anymore. This all needs to be fixed in a month. And we're seeing that the Russians are falling apart. So while they may say no matter the cost, and that's a great point to say, because that is true. They're saying no matter the cost. They don't have the ability to continue on, even if they want to expend everything they have. They don't have enough to expend, especially when the Ukrainians are continuously being supplied by the West that has been very generous in its support. And I'll also add to that in a second. They've been so generous with their support that the Ukrainians have been able to keep on going, and not only have they been losing vehicles here and there, they're actually growing their forces through captured Russian vehicles and also donated Western vehicles like the Bradleys, like the not the Warriors yet, but the AMX-10s, and also the Challengers and the Leopards, and maybe even later on the M1 Abrams, maybe even aircraft. We haven't seen them yet, but it's never off the table because they're always somewhere in the background. But with that, I hope that does answer that comment fairly well, and it is a good point. I'm not gonna deny that at all. But I hope that my point stands that no matter if they want that $150 hammer, there's no way for them to get it because they don't have the money, no matter how much they want it. But with that, I hope that does address the live chat. And thank you so much, Enforcer for President, once again, for supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing going. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And the second one we have is from Psyops, who puts in a $50 donation. And Psyops, thank you very much for that as well. He says, demand support and contact your reps, write them letters, call them, email, demand that they help Ukraine. If you can't support them financially through volunteering, you can make a difference. If you need to have help contacting them, ask me on Discord. And real quick, Psyops, I have to agree with you completely on that. One thing that I've seen is reps, senators, etc., they don't take just a handful of people seriously, but if a ton of people call and email them, they have to respond because they can't ignore people in mass. And of course, power comes from big groups. So I would definitely have to encourage that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would also agree with that as well, Psyops, and that's something that we've actually been trying to pioneer on our Discord server. Right now, we're trying to attempt to get people to contact their representatives and their senators here in the United States, and we also encourage everyone, although unfortunately I'm only from the United States, so I don't really know how y'all will go about that in other countries, to contact your members of parliament, your elected representatives, to let them know how much of support there is for Ukraine and how much it should continue going on. A lot of people here in America always say, oh, you know, the elected representatives, they don't really listen to us. But they do, believe it or not, although it never really seems like it. You can always send them a letter. You can always call up their office at the Cannon House and let them know that you want the support to continue. You think that it's vital to the future of the United States and Ukraine that the support continues to flow and that Ukraine eventually wins. The only way that they can win is through us and through our support. And also, thank you so much, Tony Fleming. We'll get to that in a minute. But the only way they can win is through us and through our support. Every single nation in the world has to do their part to see that the Western world survives as strong as it can against such a vicious threat that the Russians pose. And so through that, you should tell them, send more support bills that support Ukraine, and send more monetary and military support that way. And you know, and some people will go, and this is a fair point, but I do have a counter to it. Well, my representative from my district or my area of the state or the country, wherever you may be, they're not really pro-Ukrainian. That doesn't matter. Why not let them know? Let them know that their constituents from their district actually do support Ukraine. Tell them, I voted. Hell, if you didn't even vote for them, just tell them, I voted for you. And if you don't support Ukraine, I'm not voting for you again. That will scare the hell out of someone, especially an elected representative, because while they may have the backing of super PACs and people who can actually fund their campaign, if there's no one to vote for them, then they're not going to get reelected. And they'll be scared as hell, and they'll make sure to maybe have a come to Jesus meeting and go, well, I just woke up and had the ghost of Ukraine present, past, and future come to me last night, and I actually support Ukraine now. It's been a wonderful turnaround. That may be how they go, but you'll never know unless if you send a letter to them and let them know that you actually do believe that Ukraine should be supported and that they should win this war. And so I would ask all of you, I think this is much more important than just spreading the news about this channel, to contact your representatives, whether they be in the United States or abroad in a foreign country, and let them know that you do want the support to Ukraine to continue and that you want to see Ukraine win because of us. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support, Psyops. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And thank you once again for supporting us to help this channel keep on running, so that way we can try and spread the word about Ukraine and also encourage as much support for them, both governmentally and through the citizen, as much as we can. And so with that, we are on to the last question of this segment before we move on back into the news and wrap it up. So with that, what do we got, Matthew?
Right. So the third and final one of the first question segment goes to Tony Fleming, who put in that $100 donation. And thank you very much, Tony, for that. And Tony says something from your friends in the 5th SF, the oppressor Liber.
And thank you so much for the support, Tony Fleming. And let me put that in real quick. De oppressor Liber, or Liber. So that is motto of the United States Army Special Forces. Interesting. The 5th Special Forces. Very interesting. And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Tony Fleming. And that is very interesting. That is very cool. I'm supposing, Tony Fleming, if I was to connect the dots together, and I'm not really the best at connecting the dots, you were a member of the Green Berets, or a similar Army Special Forces group, or you are right now. Either way, I do thank you so much for the support, Tony, because you're helping this channel to keep going. And I say that to everyone, but it's true to each and every person. You're helping us to keep this thing rolling, helping us to keep on supporting Ukraine, telling the news of what's going on over there, both the good, the bad, and the ugly. And if it wasn't for viewers like you, it wouldn't be possible. And so thank you so much once again. Long live the Leaf Spring Army, and thank you so much for watching this channel and enjoying it enough that you would help us to keep on covering this news and keep on delivering what's going on in Ukraine. And so with that, that was the last question of the segment, and we're now going to be moving on into the Bakhmut area and covering the battle line, well, the battlefield analysis that's been going on today. And so over the past 24 hours, we've seen that the front line has not developed much, in fact, hardly at all, and I'll show you all right here. Here it is at the 14th of January at 6:27 p.m. local time, which means this was updated only about 4 hours ago. And if we go back another 24 hours, we'll see that the Russians have moved forward and they've almost taken the entirety of the chicken tender. This isn't that massive of a deal. They have controlled the summit for some while, meaning that they've been able to direct fire downwards into the town of Bakhmut. And thank you so much, Paul Fitzgerald. We'll also get to that in a bit. And I got to thank you so much. But getting back to the analysis, the Russians have already controlled the summit, so they've been able to fire into Bakhmut for some while now, and they've now pushed forward and taken what appears to be the majority of the higher summit of the chicken tender, and now the Ukrainians are at the base of it. This doesn't mean much, because now these Russian forces that are coming over the berm of the chicken tender are now coming under fire from Ukrainian forces, both in the Yahitne area and also in the Ivanivsky area on these two ridge lines. Also, over the past 24 hours, well, actually, correction, we've actually seen that the Russians have been able to take one entire field on the very southern end of this ridgeline near Klishkivka, but it appears that their progress has been greatly slowed, and it looks like the Ukrainians are giving them one hell of a fight down there, and making sure that they will not be able to advance an inch forward without taking heavy losses. This means that, by and large, I would have to say the Bakhmut battle has finally entered its second phase after nearly 4 months of fighting. And the initial phases, we saw that the Ukrainians needed to control the chicken tender and also Soledar to maintain their primary lines of defense of the town of Bakhmut and also their northern flank. We also saw that the Ukrainians controlled the southern ridgeline and held the Russians back near the area of Kryvyi and Dnipro as well. And as long as they held them here, the first line of defense was intact. We're now seeing that in the northern area, the Ukrainians have been moved onto their second line of defense, which is Blahodatne and Krasnoora, and we've also seen that the Ukrainians have withdrawn into the area of Yahitne and Ivanivsky onto the ridgelines behind Bakhmut and also into Bakhmut proper to create the second line of defense in the center. Further on down in the south, the Klishkivka defensive line still remains intact, and so the first line of defense is still there, but it appears that the Russians have been able to make a small foothold onto the southern ridge. This, of course, is a serious concern for the Ukrainians, and their objective will most likely be to hold the Russians exactly where they are on this part of the battlefield, or to push them back off the ridgeline and back into the fields of Intrivka and Kurtamivka. This could become potentially deadly for the Ukrainians if this small protrusion here is allowed to expand towards Chasiv Yar and further up the ridge from Klitschkivka and towards Ivanivsky. If the Russians took this area, not only would they already have the M03 to the north in jeopardy of being captured if the second line of defense was to fall for some odd reason, but now the T0504 to the south of Bakhmut may also be in jeopardy as well, as the next line of defense in between Klitschkivka, it's only Chasiv Yar. Ivanivsky, which is a very small village, is the only thing lying in between control of the T0504 if the Russians were to advance from this area and the supply line itself. And so it appears that the Ukrainians are having a bit of a pitched battle in this area. And to be honest, the situation at this point is not incredibly ideal. It is still winnable, it's still defendable, but it's not the situation that we would have seen about a month and a half ago when the Russians had already lost about 8,000 of their guys killed and several dozen armored vehicles, tanks, armored personnel carriers, and hundreds of supply trucks to try and even make it to the outskirts of the town. One does have to remember, though, that this battle has been going on for nearly 8 months. 8 continuous months. The first battle and the second battle have been very bloody for the Russians. The Russians lost nearly 8,000 soldiers killed in the first battle of Bakhmut. And the second one, we're assuming that it's gotten around 10,000, maybe even 12,000 killed. And so this has certainly not been a battle that's been a cakewalk for them. This is no Battle of Mariupol where it only went on for 80 days. And even then, that was a massive siege, and a very long one at that. This battle has been going on for 8 entire months. And if this battle was to go on any longer, we may see that it was a year-long battle to take a town with practically no strategic importance whatsoever as far as the rest of the war is concerned. And so, while, and I do have to admit, the Battle of Bakhmut right now is not what it used to be. It's not going to be that much of a thing where we can go, oh, the Ukrainians are in a perfect position. They're in a great defensive position. They're now in, I would say, a position where they need to take precautions and they need to be ready just in case the worst case scenario was to happen, although the Ukrainians are still holding down the line incredibly well. And so now it's time for us to get into the actual videos of what's been occurring in the Soledar area, because we've seen, over the past 24 hours, no movement in this area whatsoever. And it begs the question, what's happening here? And it appears that the Ukrainians may have caught on to a tactic or a strategy that the Wagner unit was using that allowed them to take the ground a little bit faster than before. The Wagner unit's wearing Ukrainian army uniforms. And let me go and find that clip right here, where we can clearly see it. We're going to mute the audio, but we can see Russian forces moving around. And the video appears to have lagged right here, so we're going to go back. See them moving through the destroyed town of Soledar.
Kremlin.
Yeah, misspelling for sure. See them moving around, and I've got to note, it's fairly interesting. Their uniforms are almost identical to Ukrainian forces. In fact, they may as well be Ukrainian forces unless it was for that patch in the middle of their uniform. Now,
And that's most definitely a war crime, isn't it?
it is a war crime. You see, you're supposed to be able to visually identify fairly easily that your forces are friendly and the enemy are enemy. That's why armbands are a thing in this war. And the Wagner unit going and wearing nearly identical Ukrainian uniforms, you can't really tell this guy right here apart from, well, actually that is a Ukrainian correction. But you can't tell him apart from the other guys that we just saw earlier in the video that were a part of the Wagner unit. They almost look identical right here. And there's no clear armbands on them. There's also just a small patch in the center of their uniform, and if you're aiming your gun, your rifle, you will not see that patch. Their arms are going to be covering it. And so there's no way to tell, there's no way for a Ukrainian to tell if these guys are friendly. And this actually adds to a story that we accounted for the other day, and I cannot show you the video, but I'll describe what happened. Some Ukrainian soldiers were in a foxhole in the area of Soledar, and a Russian soldier came running forward. It was a Wagner unit soldier, and he aimed his gun at one of them, and then slammed it into the other guy's head, knocked him down onto the ground, and started yelling for them to surrender. the Ukrainians were completely confused. There was no identification marks to show that this was really a Russian soldier. So they started telling the guy, hey, man, calm down. You're having like an episode. Just calm down, man. You're all right. Calm down. And this guy was freaking out, trying to grab one of the Ukrainians' guns. And he said, no, man, give that back. You just calm down, man. You got to calm the hell down. You know, it's not as bad as it is. The Ukrainians thought he was another Ukrainian. They were trying to calm him down. They're like, man, you know, the war's gotten to him. He's broken. He needs to just calm down. So what the Russian does is that he now jumps down right into the pit, and he puts 2 bullets straight into the Ukrainian soldier's head that was trying to get his rifle back from him and telling him, hey, man, calm down. You're having a fit. And then he shot the other guy in the chest and killed him too. And then he hopped right out of the foxhole and got right back to business. And that's what the Wagner unit's been doing, and I'm believing and I'm assuming that this may be the reason why we saw them making ground, because now, wearing these new uniforms that look just like Ukrainian uniforms with really no identifying markers whatsoever, Ukrainian forces are assuming that they're also Ukrainian forces. And so the Wagner unit is able to get right up onto them, right into their forces, and then just wipe them out, or cause such a confusion that the Ukrainian unit goes into a retreat or a rout to try and reorganize and figure out what the hell's even going on, because there's crossfire going on and it looks like friendly fire, and they don't know what the hell is going on anymore. It's sickening. Now there is a way to get around this for the Ukrainians. And I'll explain it here in a second. This is a tried and true strategy that many nations have used throughout the course of war, and this was used very well during the Second World War by U.S. forces in the Pacific. The use of passwords. Passwords need to be implemented amongst Ukrainian units in the area fighting the Wagner unit, considering that they're using low-down criminal tactics such as these. They need to implement passwords, and if a soldier cannot give the password that he is supposed to within a split second, he needs to be shot on sight, because now we can't tell if the Wagner unit is Russian or Ukrainian. They look Ukrainian, but they're fighting for Russia. So the Ukrainians need to find a way to make sure that they can identify the friendly forces from the enemy, so that way if another guy walks up on them like that and he says, surrender your guns, you say, what's the password? He doesn't have one. Boom, he's dead. And no Ukrainian lives are lost at all because of that. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that clip and into the rest of the news we've gotten from the Soledar area, where we also saw some pictures of Wagner artillery in action. Here we can see an Uragan firing off its rockets. We can also see another picture of the Uragan with the rocket traveling a little bit further. We can see here a Grad with the Z's marked on the side, and that Grad looks like it's seen better days. This thing may have been around during the death of Khrushchev. I'm not really sure. Moving on to the next one, we saw a D-20 firing. And also we can see, I believe these are actually some of the new casings for Russian propellant that they have been trying to produce. And we can also see I don't even know what the hell that is. It's not a peon. I don't know what that thing is, to be honest with you all, but it's something, and the Wagner unit's firing it. Also notice that the powder is extremely orange.
And also, why is there fire behind it? Is that another second one firing?
It may, oh, well, you're talking about over here?
Yeah.
Oh, that's just the exhaust from the muzzle brake. You know, it's just taking the force and powder and shooting it out both ends. Well, 3 ends,
wild.
actually. Yeah, it's kind of wild, but it's extremely orange, which may be showing some kind of a foul propellant that isn't really strong, or has some kind of a defect in it, because usually propellant isn't that orange. It's usually like some kind of like a tinge of orange or a tinge of yellow, maybe just white, but you rarely ever see, you know, just outside of the actual flame of the powder igniting, such an orange color. It's maybe indicating that the Russians are using low-grade propellants to fire off these shells, well, specifically the Wagner unit. With that, we're now going to...
That wouldn't be a shock at all.
It wouldn't be a shock at all. I mean, like, hell, it wouldn't be a shock if the Russians are using straight-up piss to shoot off those things. By the way, in case you didn't know, Matthew, the reference to that is back in the day when gunpowder was in its infancy in Europe, the Catholic Church found out that the best way to make gunpowder was through piss, because that was the only way you could get the I believe it was like the sulfur nitrate or whatever the chemical name is to make gunpowder with in Europe at that time, was just straight through urine. So
is it not anything that hasn't been tried already? Like, that's something else.
well, yeah, and also according to the Catholic Church, the only urine that could be used was a priest's, because it was holy enough to create the combustion. So then the Catholic Church for a while had a monopoly on gunpowder sales.
Oh boy.
Kind of a bit of a funny story. But anyways, moving on from that, we saw that the Wagner unit did pay dearly for taking Soledar today, as a Ukrainian drone was able to knock out some of them. You see them all right there. You see the bomblet on its way. You see it falling, exploding, and it looks like one of them, well, actually, it looks like two of them got it. So very nice to know that the Wagner unit is not smart enough to pick up on new strategies, but they are smart enough to pick up some of that brand new shrapnel and put it right deep inside of their bodies. And so with that, we're going to be moving on into the next clip of news from the Soledar area, where we also saw the Ukrainian flag still flying in Soledar. I'll actually show y'all where this specifically was. We can see right there on a drone video. And we can also hear Igor telling us that the flag's still flying.
This guy's going to become the national narrator of Ukraine.
Yes, he will. And also, I'm still in contact with one of the guys who's in his unit right now and trying to get the whole thing with the Igor shirts sorted out. But that's the end of the clip. And some of y'all are probably wondering, that looks like a salt mine tower. Where is that? And I can show y'all where that is. So let's go to Google Maps. Let's go down to Bakhmut and Soledar. So right here, and then we'll go to Soledar. And if we go all the way up here, this salt mine tower, if I'm correct, was somewhere about right here. Oh, no, correction. It's not right there. It's somewhere over here. I think that's actually the one right here. So the Ukrainians still do control Soledar, at least a small part of it on the very outskirt of it. And you can also see that that's represented on Deep State UA right here. They do control this area. The Russians are starting to move into it a little bit. And the Ukrainian forces are setting up a brand new defensive line on the ridgelines behind Blahoddatny and also directly inside of Blahoddatny as well. And so with that, I gotta thank our man Igor here, or the Zhaga man, for letting us know that there is a Ukrainian flag still flying inside of Soledar somewhere, and maybe one day, here in the future, we'll see that the Ukrainians were able to take Soledar in its entirety. It's not unheard of before. They did retake Kherson, and if they can retake Kherson, they can retake just about anything. We're now going to be moving all the way behind the lines, where we also saw an update from Soledar from a Ukrainian soldier.
Щодо оперативної ситуації по Солідарі. В Солідарі ситуація тяжка, але повірте, там стоять такі підрозділи, які вдень навалюють батальйон, до батальйону їхньої піхоти. Атакують ці приватні, у них одна мотивація і платять $400 в сутки. Тому зрозуміло, вони лізти, поки їх не виб'ють, вони будуть лізти. Але там зараз уже сложилась така ситуація, і я не бачу того, щоб ви там зраду розганяли. Козаки, які на місці, працюють тандем, піхота, артилерія, міномети, коригування, там Мадяр зі своїми. Там все, повірте, не так погано, як ви думаєте. Краще подивіться, Мадяр там викладає відео звідти, і стане все зрозуміло. По Бахмуту, за Бахмут не хвилюйтеся. Якщо в Солідарі там міські бої йдуть, то Бахмут тримає лінію оборони навколо міста. Там зі сторони чуть Патрісія Лулумби є такі непонятні движення, але у нас оборона за містом фактично вся. Ще в місто хай попробують залізти. Більше ми програємо, на жаль, в інформаційному полі. І вибивають наших блогерів, які освіщають нехороші люди. І нехороші люди, на жаль, втягують у це військових, і псевдовійськових, і ряжених. А ви, як завжди, не мої підписники, але українці, ведетесь на всяку чепуху, паніку розганяєте, потім пишете такий бред.
And so with that's the end of the clip, and we can see that the Ukrainian forces are still organizing defense positions in the Blahoddatny area. Of course, the casualties have been incredibly high for the Russians in that area as well, due to the Russians, of course, being poorly organized and incompetent. And we can also see that he is addressing some Ukrainians who are also falling for propaganda and fear-mongering and starting to spread around silly stuff, kind of as normal, that comes with people who don't really pay too much attention to the war, but then they'll hear something in passing and then it just triggers them for some reason and they just freak out and start working off of that alone without any additional information. So with that, we're now going to be moving on to our next clip as well from the Soledar area, where we also saw that a Ukrainian soldier told us that the Russian forces have taken so many losses in some areas of Soledar that they are practically walking over their own bodies. I cannot show pictures like that on stream to be able to confirm that for y'all visually, but I will have to agree with this guy. they are walking over their own bodies. Some of these fields inside of Ukraine, or around the Soledar area specifically, for example, this one here, in this small area, about that you see right here where my mouse cursor is circling, there were around 30 dead Russians laying out in this field in one picture from a drone. And it's like that everywhere around Soledar. The Russians have been taking losses to an unbelievable degree trying to take this small village that really has no significance, and he's not wrong. So I'm going to show y'all this clip and let y'all hear it from him.
Якби хвилями, наступають хвилями, якби, можна сказати, по трупам один одного.
This will be the first victory over Ukrainian forces by Russia after months of military setbacks. But as Ukraine fortifies its positions, it's unlikely to make much difference to the outcome of this conflict. And in the fields of dead sunflowers, new trenches are being dug. This war of attrition is brutal and is seemingly without end. Alex Rossi, Sky News, on the outskirts of Soledar.
And with that, that's the end of the clip. And it's, of course, interesting to hear Ukrainian soldiers say that there's been so many dead bodies piled up by the Russians in this area due to them pretty much going into full frontal assaults without really any support, that they're practically walking over their own bodies. I'll try and find y'all. Well, I can't really find, even if I found a clip for y'all to show, I couldn't show it on here, but make sure to go find it for yourselves. If y'all are interested in actually seeing that, make sure to go around and take a look. And so with that, we're now moving on down into the Krasnoor area, where we also saw our man that we actually had one time on the stream before talking about skincare, Ukraine TBIC, helping to evacuate wounded citizens and civilians from the area. Artillery shell almost landed directly on top of them. And they're speeding to a house as it's on fire. You see them grabbing some kids, trying to get them out of there with their family.
Go, run. Давай, давай.
We hear another round almost land right on top of TBIC. And we see the poor kids crying.
Also, is there any way to bump up the audio on these?
Unfortunately, no. Well, actually, we can right here. Yeah, there we go.
Kurva? Yeah, nearly. Who am I? Canadian volunteer, hospitaliere.
Why you drive this?
We have 15 civilians. We work all Soledar. Please. There's 15 people and 2 volunteers.
I tried my best.
And with that, that's the end of the video. But a real quick second, I would like to give another shout out to this guy, because not only is he a really funny guy, but he does incredible work and has got a heart of gold from what we can tell. This man runs a YouTube channel called Ukraine TBIC, and I'll actually pull that up for y'all real quick, so that way y'all can go and know exactly what this channel looks like, and go subscribe to him, and tell him that the Lee Spring Army sent y'all his way. This guy is incredible. Not only is he helping to try and evacuate civilians from the area, but he shows a whole bunch of content and information about the war in Ukraine that comes directly from the front lines in the Soledar area. I believe the last time we checked out his channel, he had something like 13.4 thousand subscribers. He now has 15.5. So either he's getting a lot of shout-outs, or a lot of the Lee Spring Army has come his way and has been watching his videos, and he deserves a lot of attention, a lot of support. This guy is out there risking his life, like y'all saw in that video, almost coming under direct artillery barrage every hour of every day to try and save the citizens of Ukraine, citizens that he doesn't even have any connection to, rather than the common belief that they shouldn't be oppressed by Russian invaders. And so make sure to go over to his channel right here, Ukraine TBIC. Make sure to subscribe to him and let him know that a lot of the world is still behind Ukraine, and that they want to see this man succeed, and the nation of Ukraine succeed in this war as well. What a guy. I just gotta say, a really impressive guy right here, and maybe we'll be able to bring him on sometime in the future. With that, we're going to be moving on into the next clip of news, now moving into the center of the front line in the Battle of Bakhmut, where we also saw that the Atom unit was dropping more grenades onto the Russians today. We're going to mute that. Yeah, we're going to mute that. When you see the snow-covered fields around Bakhmut, cratered with shell holes, when you see some Russians wandering around right down there where the mouse cursor is. When you see the first bomblet drop, steadily going on its way to hit a Russian and make sure to take him out. When you see him now kind of just wiggling around, it appears that he's trying to get in his daily aerobics. Another Russian hiding in a hole like a rabbit is not coming out, and he's decided to leave this man to his morning exercises the best he can. Well, that's the end of the clip, and it appears that the man was just dead tired at the end of the exercises and decided to lie down for a little. With that, that's the end of the clip, but once again, good to know that the Ukrainians are making sure the Russians pay for what they've done. Moving on into the Bakhmut area, we also saw a Ukrainian mortar in action here, making sure to deliver some deadly fire onto the Russians right on the outskirts of town. We're gonna have to mute because we just heard the arrival of the wild man, but unfortunately we can't really play much of it. We now see them using the small infantry mortar. It appears to be a 61mm, if I had to take a guess, as they're firing it off near the Russians. Assuming the small caliber of this mortar, it has to be somewhat closer to the front lines, which shows you that this was most likely directly attached to some kind of an infantry unit. You see them now using a larger mortar. It appears to be 120mm, and this thing is really sending the firepower downrange, as you can see right there in this drone video. And now we can see an entire battery of 61mm mortars, 3 of them delivering as much firepower as physically possible, and hopefully making sure that the Russians in that area look a little bit like Swiss cheese. With that, that's the end of the clip, but once again, good to see. We're now moving on into the next bit of news in the Bakhmut area, moving a little bit further on down the line, where we also saw some more medical evacs in the area.
Можете евакуювати зараз на точку евакуації, провести 300-ту, як прийняли, прийом. Назар Педагогу, мінус. Як зможете евакуювати, як закінчиться обстріл, доповідь на евакуацію, я туди відправлю евак-групу. Назар плюс.
Ага, ну добре. Отак, док. Вітаю, друже. Представтесь, будь ласка.
Мене звуть Медок, я ротний медик 204-го батальйону 4-ї роти. Стрілець.
Ви киянин теж, як і всі в батальйоні?
Живу в Києві, так. Хоча саме з Західної України, з Івано-Франківська.
Що робили до 24 лютого?
До 24 лютого останніх 8 років я займався відеозйомкою, був директором інформаційного агентства.
Якого?
Інформ.ua.
Чудово. Ну, інформагенція Інформ.ua.
Так.
От. Який там статус в цьому інформагенції?
Ну, я був директором, скоріше за все, було як ТОВ Інформ.ua. І ми займалися створенням різних родів роликів, знімали YouTube канал у нас свій був, виходили на створення телеканалу.
Отак. Ну а тепер ви рятуєте життя бійцям у Бахмуті. Вражає. Розкажіть свій досвід війни, які перші бойові операції, в яких ви брали участь?
Скажімо так, в війні це моя перша війна. Я з 24-25 лютого записався в тероборону. Це, скажімо так, до найбільшого відділу, де можна було отримати зброю. Це було льодовий стадіон в Києві на Теремках. Я прийшов туди, півдня вистояв в черзі, щоб отримати свою зброю. І з того часу я, скажімо так, знаходжуся в ТРО і в цих, скажімо так, заходах по забезпеченню територіальної цілісності України я беру участь. Це перше було, це ми в Лютіжі були, в травні були в Бахмуті і зараз знов другий раз вже в Бахмуті.
Угу. Другий раз. Ну як зараз тут ті позиції, які ви тримаєте, як організована у вас робота з пораненими, чи багато у вас втрат, як ви воюєте, розкажіть.
Значить, по евакуації у нас досить все просто, є, скажімо так, позиції, бійці знають, де є точка евакуації, куди треба доставити пораненого. І коли стається якийсь випадок з кимось, отримання поранення, попередньо була проведена робота з бійцями, як правильно евакуювати, як правильно дати першу допомогу, це там накласти турнікет, звільнити дихальні шляхи, щоб людину можна було спасти. І вже вони нам, коли доставляють, ми їх різними транспортними засобами намагаємося доставити як можна швидше в стабіляційний пункт, де їх вже там стабілізують, надають більш професійну кваліфіковану допомогу і далі вже по етапам евакуації там в інші міста України.
Тобто достатньо швидко вдається, да, врятувати життя і в будь-якому разі реагувати, да? Тобто у вас швидко діє.
Безперечно, у нас саме довга евакуація була 20 хвилин. Зазвичай це 10 хвилин евакуація. Ну, що це не рахуючи, що там немає обстрілу позиції, люди можуть його підтягнути до точки евакуації. І це не має значення день, ніч, ну, в будь-який час доби ми їдемо, забираємо і відвозимо людину.
Ми слухали тільки що було якраз там повідомлення про контузію, да? Тобто цей боєць зараз буде евакуйований, все це вже організовано, да?
Безперечно, зараз поступить інформація, що бійця доставляють на точку евакуації, бо наскільки я чув по розмовах, там зараз іде обстріл. Як тільки будуть умови більш безпечні, що може під'їхати туди автомобіль, і безпечно бійці можуть переходити, одразу автомобіль вийде туди, там за 2-3 хвилинки, і після того евакуйований буде до Бахмута для надання більш кваліфікованої медичної допомоги.
Як настрій тут у бійців? Чи багато звертаються до доктора, там, до лікаря? Що там з хворобами, з розладами? Скільки тут роботи в тебе?
Роботи, ну, завжди є робота, як саме перший раз, так і другий. Окрім, скажімо так, поранень, да, бійців, є соматичні захворювання, є люди, які мають захворювання раніше, тобто це там різні артрити, артрози у людей, деякі можуть бути там. І це треба лікувати. Тим більше зараз вже потепліло, але коли ми приїхали сюди, було дуже...
So wait, I've got a question about this guy real quick.
Yes.
Is this guy, like, I'm confused. At first he said he was a doctor, then he kind of described being a medic, and now he's saying that he treats diseases?
Yes, because sometimes medics don't just deal with, gunshot wounds and shrapnel wounds. There's also dysentery and other kinds of things that spread amongst the unit that must be cared for.
Huh, okay, but he is just a medic?
Yes, medics really try and tend to everything. They're kind of like, I guess you could say, not really a physician, but I guess the closest thing you can get to the front lines to a physician. They have to be able to address any elements, even if it's not an actual combat wound affliction, or it's just some kind of a disease. There's all kinds of diseases that can overtake a military. There's typhoid, dysentery, there's a million of them. Typhus, you could get anything out there. You could get cholera and die from drinking bad water or just being exposed to bad water. But yes, he does really everything. He's a jack of all trades, I guess you could say.
Позамерзали, є обмороження і багато захворіли, кашляють, кашель, це такі найбільш типові, і приходиться самому надавати якусь там таку допомогу. Крім того, є медпункт у нас в батальйоні, де цих бійців оглядають, надають кваліфіковану допомогу, ліками забезпечені. От так. От ви запитувалися про настрій бійців, да, от наше. Я вам скажу, такі були випадки, коли бійця евакуюють до точки евакуації бійці, да, і коли ти приїжджаєш, і він такий, все, мені стало легше, тому що мене вже медики зустріли, і я знаю, що буде все добре. І я хочу ще додати те, що бійці, які знають, що їх нададуть допомогу медичну, вони є набагато мотивованіші, менше бояться чогось і краще воюють.
Ну, це тому, що, мабуть, постійно бачать доктора на позиціях.
Безперечно. Ми тут кожен раз, коли наша рота, люди, з якими я служу, вони бачать мене постійно тут, я з ними на зв'язку, спілкуюся, і коли якась є необхідність, зразу ми їх допомагаємо.
Да. Ну, як в тебе взагалі бачення, що відбувається в Бахмуті, як впевненість в наших діях, як ти оцінюєш дії противника?
Багато противник використовує артилерію, намагається, скажімо так, там, де він не може піхотою пройти, так, він намагається це, скажімо, перекрити свою артилерію. Тому він, скажімо так, в деяких моментах розчарувався, да, їхні бійці не настільки мотивовані, їхні бійці наскільки я знаю зі слів хлопців, кажуть, що лежать поранені, їх ніхто не забирає. Хоча можна надати допомогу, і людина буде далі жити там. А у них взагалі це не забезпечено. І це, скажімо так, наші бійці відчувають, що про наших турбуються. І вони краще себе почувають. І однозначно їхня мотивація набагато більша. От я стільки бачив наших, знахів хлопців наших, їм, скажімо так, не страшно воювати. Вже не один бачив смерті тут, і нікого це, скажімо так, не зробив кроку назад. Всі знають, чого тут, і ми переможемо це однозначно.
Дякую тобі, друже. Дякую за те, що захищаєш Бахмут як свій дім. Дякую, друже.
So that's the end of the interview with this doc here in Bakhmut. And of course, good to hear that the 204th Battalion has a very competent sounding medic out there that's able to address really any ailment or affliction that a soldier can find themselves with on the front line. And they can also count on him to patch them up if they ever come into a gunshot wound or a little bit of shrapnel. With that, we're going to be moving on out of the center of the town, the center of the Bakhmut line, and on into the Klishkivka area, where we also saw that the 36th Marine Brigade was hitting the Russians in this area as well, with their drones. Always a pretty impressive intro from the Marines. I mean, look at that. There's a Russian down there. He's just lying around. It's never good to lie around on the job. And we can now see the bomblet on its way, causing a slight discoloration. But you see him roll right into the way of the bomblet. Very unfortunate for him. Just look at that. If only he had rolled the other way, maybe he would have been okay.
Nah, I doubt it.
Yeah, honestly, I kind of doubt it, to be honest with you. In the next little clip, we can see some Russians hiding under a tree, and it looks like the tree didn't really save them much. Now see the Ukrainians dropping another bomblet. This one falling right on top of the Russian, most likely causing him to have a very bad day. I think his foxhole was more explosive than a man's restroom after eating Taco Bell. Now see another bomblet being dropped. We can also see some tracers flying around, it seems, at the top of the screen for a second there. Moving on into the next clip, we can see a new infrared color scale. We can see two Russians down there. The bomblet looks like it's well on the way to the one on the left, and it looks like it was on the way to the guy on the left. He's now taking a moment to contemplate what kind of leg squats he should be doing on the ground while he was also on the phone. Looks like the other guy may have also not had a fun day. We now see another Russian inside of this tree line as well. The bomblet is now on its way. The bomblet drops, it explodes, and the Russians appear to do some kind of a bowling pin trick, you know, where they fall over and you get a strike and everyone in the bowling alley does like a little spin or a dance or something. That's looks like what they're doing. And so with that, that's the end of the clip. But once again, nice to know that the 36th Marine Brigade has been able to help, I guess you could say help the Russians get into exercising and aerobics, also crawling. With that, we're now moving on into the last bit of news from the Southern Front, where we also saw some fighting in the area.
Террор! Вытягивай, вытягивай!
See the Ukrainian firing his AK.
Вытягивай! Крым!
And the firefights gotten fairly intense. And with that, that's the end of the clip. And hopefully the Ukrainian forces are able to fight the Russians back from wherever they are in this area and push them off, most likely the ridgeline. With that, we're now going to be moving on from the Bakhmut area, because that's all the news we have. And of course, the battle is progressing incredibly slowly. It has been progressing in Russia's favor, however, as they're now committing practically all of their available resources into the area to try and commit human wave attacks until they eventually break the Ukrainian lines. Hopefully the Ukrainians can counter these attacks fairly well and be able to make sure to retake all the lost ground that they've taken in this battle so far, and then some. Maybe even Popasna. We're now going to be moving out of the Bakhmut area and down into Donetsk, where we also saw today a loitering drone attack by the Ukrainian forces. Now, I know that's copyrighted. No, it's not. It's classic music. Oh, it is. I promise. We see the little drone flying. We can see that's found its target. It's a Bembe. And that's what it says over there on the right side. If y'all want to actually know what this is pronounced like, Bor Roha Bembe. That's how you pronounce it. I usually say not really Russian, but the Cyrillic alphabet is incredibly simple. It's not like English where a vowel can have multiple different sounds, like the E in egg or the I guess you could say the E in Bremen. Those E's sound different. Here you can see that Cyrillic is just fairly simple, really. If you learn to read it, you can read it. The problem, however, is that you may not understand what it means, but that's what that says. Broha Bimbe. You see the thing coming in? Oh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. About 12 guys. And a BMP3. Uh-oh. That's not good for them. And that's the end of that clip. And I think those guys are now without a BMP and maybe a couple of their friends. But with that is the end of the clip. And we're now going to be moving on out of the Donetsk area and on into our next bit of news, which is all the way up in Kyiv. So now it is time for us to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 326 of the war in Ukraine.
Почну це звернення без привітання і хочу, щоб мене почули саме ті люди, не тільки політичні лідери, які досі вагаються, чи варто надавати Україні ту зброю, яка допоможе нам цього року привести до поразки державу-терориста. Росія завдала черговий масований ракетний удар по українських містах: Київ, Харків, Одеса, Кривий Ріг, Дніпро, Вінниця, Ладижин, Бурштин, Львівщина, Хмельницький та інші міста були мішенями терористів. Всюди цивільні об'єкти. В місті Дніпро внаслідок цього російського удару зруйнований житловий будинок, звичайна панельна 9-поверхівка, який доволі багато в різних містах Східної і Центральної Європи. Всі поверхи цього будинку з 2 по 9 впали від вибуху російської ракети. Вдалося врятувати десятки людей, поранених, травмованих, їм надається допомога. Серед них діти, найменшій дівчинці 3 роки. І це не зараз. Розбір завалів ще досі продовжується і триватиме всю ніч. Скільки всього людей під завалами поки що невідомо. На жаль, перелік загиблих зростає з кожною годиною. Мої співчуття рідним і близьким. Чи можна зупинити російський терор? Так. Чи можна зробити це якось інакше, ніж на полі бою в Україні? На жаль, ні. Це можна і треба зробити на нашій землі, в нашому небі, у нашому морі. Що для цього потрібно? Та зброя, яка є на складах у наших партнерів і якої так очікують наші воїни. Будь-які умовляння або час, який просто спливає, не здатні зупинити терористів, які методично вбивають наших людей ракетами, купленими в Ірані дронами, своєю артилерією, танками і мінометами. Увесь світ знає, що і як здатне зупинити тих, хто сіє смерть. Цей будинок в Дніпрі був розташований на вулиці, що називається Набережна Перемоги. Коли давали таку назву цій вулиці, мали на увазі перемогу над нацистами у Другій світовій війні. Рашисти перейняли все від того ворога вільного світу. Це очевидно. І ми маємо зробити все, щоб зупинити рашизм так само, як вільний світ свого часу зупинив нацизм. І я дякую усім, хто нам у цьому допомагає. Говорив сьогодні з прем'єр-міністром Великої Британії про деякі дуже важливі речі для нашої оборони. Деталі будуть пізніше. Але це вагомо. Це дійсно те, що потрібно. І я вірю, що аналогічні рішення все ж таки будуть ухвалені іншими нашими партнерами. Тими, хто розуміє, чому не можна давати такому злу жодного шансу. Бо таке зло не знає кордонів. Вічна пам'ять усім, чиє життя забрав рашизм. Слава усім, хто захищає людей. Всі служби зараз працюють в місцях, куди влучили російські ракети. боремось за кожну людину. Із понад 30 запущених по Україні за день ракет, понад 20 було збито. Це сотні врятованих життів. Я дякую за це нашим повітряним силам, нашим зенітникам і усім, хто допомагає. На жаль, є влучання і в об'єкти енергетичної інфраструктури. У зв'язку з цим найскладніша ситуація на Харківщині та Київській області. Ремонтні бригади роблять все можливе, щоб якнайшвидше відновити генерацію і постачання електрики. І робота триватиме цілодобово. І обов'язково ворог отримає нашу відповідь на полі бою. Наші воїни це забезпечать. Кожен, хто причетний до цього та інших ракетних ударів проти України, будуть знайдені і притягнуті до відповідальності. Слава Україні!
Oh, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 326 of the war in Ukraine. And that wraps up our news summary for the day. I thank you all so much once again for watching. I hope you all have enjoyed the news tonight and found out what y'all were looking for. And if y'all were able to, please make sure to subscribe, like, and comment to this channel and help to spread the word of the Enforcer and also the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army being our community of viewers who are very active in the live chat and huge fans of what we've been able to do so far as a massive group. The Lee Spring Army, more so, not just the Enforcer channel, has been able to raise nearly $750,000 in support of Ukraine, and our goal is to reach 1 million by the time this war ends, or at least well above. And so I ask that y'all help to spread the news of this channel around and help us to be able to raise support for Ukraine here on this channel and help to continue to further the cause of Ukraine and its support around the world over. And so with that, we're about to be moving on into our question segment, addressing all of the super chats that have been sent in tonight, incredibly graciously by a lot of the Lee Spring Army and its viewers to help this channel to keep on running. And we'll also be addressing as many live chats as we can once we round out all of the super chats. But before we get to all of those, we'll have to get onto our polls first. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so we have 3 polls to address, and let's go ahead and address the first one that is still up and running. The question is, if you wanted to serve in the Ukrainian Foreign Legion, which position would you want? It looks like 38%, the most popular options, say a sniper or marksman, and honestly, I'm not surprised about that. It looks like 29% said logistics and transport, 18% said infantry or ground soldier, and 15% said medic. Now, for me, I would personally probably go for sniper myself. I could do the medic position, but that wouldn't be preferable for me because I just have a really bad problem seeing really gory stuff. It's always been a thing of mine. That's why I'm not going to be a doctor. So, but yeah, definitely sniper for me. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that I most likely end up in logistics and transport. I'm not really one to imagine myself to be a sniper. Snipers are not a fun job, believe it or not. I believe that job is nothing but raw suffering. I really do admire the men and women who do end up becoming sniper and marksmen, snipers and marksmen, because it takes a large amount of dedication, skill, and a commitment to pretty much sitting like a statue for nearly days on end sometimes to be able to hit their targets. So I wouldn't be one to be a marksman. Being in the infantry, everyone wants to be in the infantry if it's not a sniper. So not really my thing either. Medics and logistics are probably the most important supporting roles there are, and really do help those frontline soldiers, the few that there should be, to keep running. And it requires a lot of people in the background to help those people to keep going, and that's why I would say I would be a logistics person. Of course, in the end, if the situation became severe and there were too many, I guess you could say logisticians and such, they would turn some of those logisticians and logistics units into frontline fighting soldiers, such as the infantry. So in the end, just because you were a logistics part of a logistics unit, you could help to supply those forces, and if the situation became desperate, or there were too many, I guess I could say supply units, you would end up becoming infantry anyways. So with that, I hope that does address the poll fairly well, at least in my opinion, but it looks like most of y'all wanted to end up becoming a sniper or a marksman, which I find to be very interesting because I've never really heard good stories from snipers and marksmen that I've ever talked to. But with that, we're on to the next one.
And the next poll says, how should Ukraine respond to Russia's continued attacks on civilians across the region? 46% said continue to mount a counteroffensive. 40% said strike Moscow directly. 11% said appeal to NATO for intervention, and 3% said unsure. I would have to go with, honestly, I'd have to go with appeal to NATO for intervention. I think they need more stronger weapons, and I think it's important that literally anything and everything we can send to Ukraine gets sent there. I've seen a ton of people saying that if we continue to give stronger weapons to Ukraine, it's almost next to certain that they're going to win the war. So that's very important. But it looks like only 11% voted for that option. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, in my opinion, I believe a counterattack would probably be the best thing for the Ukrainians to do right now. The support they have is sufficient to directly counter Russian forces earlier on in the war when they were at their best. And so we know that the Ukrainians do possess the ability right now to be able to launch a successful counterattack. The support will only help them to pull off that counterattack marginally better. So I believe that right now, the best situation for the Ukrainians would be is to parry the Russians finally getting to the second line of defense in the Battle of Bakhmut, for the large part at this point, is to counterattack somewhere in the south near Melitopol or somewhere near the Starobilsk area to show that the Russian forces, while dedicating everything they have to try and take Bakhmut, pale in comparison to the abilities of the Ukrainian armed forces, and it'll show that with all the effort the Russians have put into the last 4 months to get very minimal gains, they can all be erased within a few days due to a single impressive counterattack. And so that would be my opinion. I think a counterattack would probably be the best thing for the Ukrainians to do right now. Appealing to NATO for intervention would practically be pointless at this point, because we see that rather than military and economic support, they never directly get involved. And so taking that option instead of a counterattack or attacking Moscow directly with some kind of a drone weapon wouldn't be making any kind of meaningful results and would, in my opinion, be wasted time. But with that, I hope that addresses the poll fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
Next up, the third poll says, should Ukraine adopt a password identification, shoot-to-kill policy towards soldiers? It looks like 78% said yes, it's needed to avoid Russian imposters, 13% said unsure, and 9% said no, there will be accidental deaths. Now, I'm sure that there will be some accidents that happen as a result of that, because not everybody's going to follow instructions perfectly. But I think that's sadly just going to have to be a side effect of it, because, without a password identification system, they're going to have no way of knowing, if that same situation that we saw in the video is going to happen again. And I just don't see any other solution to it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree. I think the password identification, if it hasn't already been implemented in frontline units, needs to become mandatory immediately, especially in any area that comes in contact with the Wagner unit, considering they're now committing that particular war crime. Now, it always sounds unfortunate to say that a Ukrainian soldier could be shot because he may forget his password, but what would be more unfortunate is for an entire Ukrainian squad to be wiped out because they thought that one of their guys just went rogue and they were trying to reason with him and calm him down or something similar. That is definitely a far worse fate. And of course, I have read stories. I'm sure many of y'all have read the book by E.B. Sledge about his time in the Pacific, such as the Battle of Peleliu, where one of his friends in his unit was actually blown away because the battle buddy he had was not able to remember that his friend went to go pee. And so when he crawled out of his foxhole, the other guy was asleep. He forgot the password. So he woke up and he saw a guy running towards him in the dark with someone behind him. They shot both of them. And then his friend, the battle buddy who was asleep, he crawled out of the foxhole, put a 1911 right into that guy's temple, and blew his head off. And then next morning they found out that it was actually his battle buddy he had fallen asleep on, and he had totally forgotten that there was a password at all. And he also completely forgot he was asleep to not even know that his battle buddy had gone to go pee. So those kinds of unfortunate incidents do happen when you have password identification, and also sometimes just lackadaisical soldiers who get a little bit too relaxed and doze off and allow their, I guess you could say, their vices to get the best of them. But that's what happens. You've got to make sure that the unit as a whole is protected.
Now, one thing I did just see in the live chat here, which I haven't been able to confirm yet because I just saw it. I saw David Myers say there's been a correction. It was not Ukraine soldier killed by Russia, but it was instead a Wagner guy dressed as a Ukrainian soldier killed by Russian soldiers.
Wait a minute, about that video?
I believe so, yes.
I'm sorry, I believe at the moment that's incorrect, because if I remember, the soldiers in that foxhole have blue tags on, which is a Ukrainian identifier.
Okay.
Does he have the video clip? Like, have you seen the video clip?
No.
Well,
he just has a comment.
Well, I mean, from what I've seen, they were Ukrainians, and that was a pretty pretty considerable incident, especially considering that the soldier that shot them was from the Wagner unit and was wearing a Ukrainian style uniform. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right. And that was our last poll. And also I see a few people saying that they heard that too. So I don't know if there's a way we can go back and look at it, or maybe check or something again.
Well, if someone could send me the link to my DM on Discord to that video, I'm going to watch it again and we'll see.
All right. So with that being said, we are moving on to our super chat questions. And up first, we have a $200 super chat. $200. I had to read that a second time, make sure I was looking at it right. From Paul Fitzgerald, who says, "Look up Tucker on Breaking Bad, our favorite journalist."
Tucker on Breaking Bad. Let me pull it up. Tucker on Breaking Bad. Drug addict who lives with his friend Scary Skell in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Okay. I guess. I mean, the guy looks like an average reporter, I'd have to say. It looks like a man of the press. So, yeah. I thank you for the support, Paul Fitzgerald, and I hope that does address the comment fairly well, because I think this is the guy we're talking about. Well, the guy you're talking about for us to pull up. So, I don't really have a lot to add to this. I never really watched the show, but interesting. But anyways, like that, thank you so much for the massive support, Paul Fitzgerald. You are helping this channel to keep on running, and of course, if it wasn't for you, this wouldn't be possible up till this day. And we owe a whole load to not only you, Paul Fitzgerald, but to many Lee Spring Army members who've been supporting this channel and helping us to keep this thing running. And of course, we thank each one of y'all personally, but I wanted to thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep going. Because if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have been able to get this far. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one we have is from Chip Kerwan, who puts in a $20 donation and says, "Excellent, well-prepared, tight, hard-hitting, focused presentation. $20 for more of tonight's cough drops. Enforcer Archin and Sparkin. Arkin and Sparkin, excuse me."
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you so much for enjoying tonight's stream. I've noticed that some people seem to actually enjoy this voice here a little bit more than the other one. And this is kind of just because my throat's really worn out. I feel like I've been talking all day today, and I kind of have been. But still, I gotta thank you so much for enjoying it, and thank you for supporting this channel, because if it wasn't for it, we wouldn't be here tonight. We wouldn't be running this. Well, I wouldn't say that. That doesn't sound right. If it wasn't for y'all's continued support over the course of this entire war, we wouldn't be here tonight, because y'all are the only thing that is able to keep us doing this as a full-time job, for me to be able to do this 60 hours a week and make sure that this news is put together every single night for everyone to watch. And if it wasn't for you enjoying it, and if it wasn't for you supporting it, we wouldn't have been able to run tonight. And so I got to thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, you sound like a big Enforcer fan and also a Lee Spring Army fan. And so, long live the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, we're moving on into the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
All right. And also, PsyOp sent me something, I believe, related to that video we were just talking about. If you want to take a look at that. Looks like an ID, a picture of the guy's face, as well as a picture of him from the video.
So let's see here. You know, believe it or not, that does look a lot like the guy. Could someone real quick, if y'all can someone send me the video where the guy got shot again in my DM, so that way I can take a look at it and review it again, because I want to try and see if we can clarify that as best as possible, because it appeared that a Ukrainian soldier two Ukrainian soldiers got gunned down in the original video, but upon further review, it actually looks like that it may actually be a guy who was part of the Wagner unit, which is a little odd. You know, in fact, that may actually change the entire story. It may have been Wagner unit soldiers dressed up like Ukrainians, and the Russian ran up on him and thought they were Ukrainians, and so he shot him because of that, and they were trying to calm him down and explain, "We're Wagner, we're your guys, calm down, don't shoot us," and then he shot him anyways.
Well, it would still be a security risk to Ukrainian soldiers because if they ran across them, they might run into the same sort of issue they're having there.
They would, and I think that's still something that the Ukrainians should implement as a password system, but it looks like in the Wagner unit's own hubris, it got to them, and it actually got them killed by their own forces. But with that, we are going to be moving on to the next one while we wait for that clip. And thank you so much once again for the support.
Indeed. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Cornman, who says, Enforcer Matt and Enforcer, greetings LSA from Hartford, Connecticut. Thank you guys for streaming every night. And I learned about leaf springs with my dad's 1939 Indian chief. Leaves on the front fork. Pretty cool. I write it in his memory. And that is really cool. That is a really old bike.
Oh my God.
Let's see a picture of this.
Look at that. Now that is a cool motorcycle. Look at that thing. Wow.
Oh, let's see. Where's the leaves on the front? Do you see them?
I think I do. Let me go to another picture where we might see him better. Let's see. I'm trying to see him. Let's see, 1939 India. I know he's not lying. This thing did have leaf springs, but I'm trying to see him. I can't really see him.
They're in there somewhere. I believe it.
But man, the old motorcycles from like the late 30s are like some of my favorite in their designs. They just look so cool. Like they were all really, really neat. Like look at this one in the Indian red. Like it's just such a good motorcycle. Not only that, I also have a really soft spot for the Harley Davidson WLA right here, which was the World War II production variant of the Harley Davidson. I forgot what specific model of motorcycle it was, but it came with saddlebags, a rifle holster. This one specifically for the M1 Thompson, which is actually really cool. And it, of course, came in all drab. These things are really neat. I think only about 10,000 of them were produced, if I remember correctly. Not a large number compared to some other things in the war, but I've got to say, the motorcycles back in the day, I think they were some of the coolest. Also, they still kind of kept that, in my opinion, like kind of like bicycle-ish frame going on that made them look really neat, really lightweight. Because sometimes motorcycles these days, and this is just an opinion I hold, they start turning into road beasts. They're almost like cars with how sturdy built they are. And I know that that's probably much better for the rider, but I still like the origin of the motorcycle where it was really just a motorized bicycle, and kind of like the transition from motorized bicycle into an actual separate form of transportation completely from the bicycle. But with that, thank you so much.
I really like those old BMW bikes. Those are very cool.
Let's see, what was that one called? BMW.
Let's see. I was trying to look it up to see here.
R72. Oh yeah, there it is, right there.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, the one with the little like number plate on the front.
Yeah, these things are really cool too. I don't really think they were cool when being used a certain way with an MG34 on the sidecar right here, but they were still cool nonetheless. But they really looked a lot like the Indian or the Harley Davidson. Really, I mean, it does still look like a bicycle too.
They didn't really vary in design very much.
Nah. And then now
that exhaust is coming straight off the side of the engine to the back.
And also nowadays they have that R18 thing that is a little odd. It's a cool looking motorcycle, yes. The exhaust, however,
man,
that's a thick exhaust. I mean, like you were really I think, Matthew, this thing may be in violation of the Paris Accords with the amount of exhaust it must be shooting out from a muffler that big. Also,
man, that thing must be quiet as a mouse. And also, Hokey Redneck said, "Has the Enforcer or Matt ever ridden a bike?" I actually used to ride motorcycles a ton. Like I was a very avid motorcycle rider, but not anymore because where we moved to in here in Birmingham is not really safe because of the traffic. Everybody drives like an idiot, so you'd probably get killed in this traffic. So I want to live, so I drive a car. But anyways, what were you saying, Enforcer?
I've always wanted to get into motorcycles. One motorcycle I really like is the Indian Scout 60. Which I'll show you right here. The Indian Scout 60s look pretty neat.
Wow, that all blacked out one is something right there. I like that.
Yeah, these are really cool. Honestly, I'm a big fan of the ones in Indian red. I think they look really good. But yeah, still, these things are really cool looking. I love the Indian Scout 60s. If I could get one, I would. I don't have enough time, though, to get a motorcycle license or anything like that. And it's really unnecessary expense, so I wouldn't get one anyways. But I've always thought they looked pretty neat, and it would probably be fun to ride one. But then you also have to find somewhere to ride them that's not 280, and I don't want to die. So, it's kind of a little bit of a limiting factor there. But I hope that does address the the whole thing you were talking about with your Indian scout from 1939. Let's go back and look at that thing one more time. So, Indian Chief, sorry, it's an Indian Chief, but that thing is still super cool. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And really cool to hear that you actually were familiarized with Lee Springs before the Lee Spring Army. And so with that, also, Uncle Grandpa said Royal Enfields are cool. I think they are too. It's just that they're kind of small. Like, they're really, really small. Royal Enfield Classic 350. That was my favorite version that they made. It's small, though. It's very, very small. Like, for me, 6'2", this thing may as well be like riding a small kid's bicycle with how big it is. But it still looks really freaking cool. I really liked them. I love all the paint jobs it comes in. Like this one, the Halcyon Black. But still, same thing. Don't really have time to get a motorcycle license. Nowhere to drive them. And then also, this one's too small for me. But I still really love the design. It's a cool looking design. But with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep running.
All right. And also, I did send some more info to your DMs from PsyOps. You got some more info on that Wagner guy there, or allegedly Wagner guy.
All right. So we've got the video now, so I'm going to watch it over here. All right. So firefight's going on. We see the cameraman, the gunner. He is near the foxhole. He threw something at it. It explodes. He now advances forward. Firefight continuing. Gets to the foxhole. Climbs in. And we can see that both of them have yellow armbands on. Just smacked the first guy in the head, causing him to bleed. And we can see... You see, this is the thing, though. This is the thing. He's got a Ukrainian flag on as well, and you know, we saw the Wagner unit earlier, and they had Wagner patches on their uniforms, so there was a little bit of identification, but it was very little that they were Russian forces. These guys are wearing nothing but Ukrainian stuff. They're wearing Ukrainian flags as patches on their sidearms, all the side of their arm. I mean, like, they look like they're regular Ukrainian forces. That's kind of the thing that's still throwing me off. The face, however, is identical from the guy that apparently was part of the Wagner unit and the guy who got shot. It looks exactly the same. And so I'm honestly going to have to say I'm on the fence on this one, because they are dressed just like Ukrainian forces, same identifiers and everything. And also, everyone's like, we can't see. Y'all can't see it. Like, I can't show it to y'all. It's in SFW. People get shot in the video. But I don't know, because they're wearing all the Ukrainian identifying insignia, but the guy's face matches up with someone that's a part of the Wagner unit. So I'm kind of confused on that, because either they went all out on being a war criminal and they literally just dressed up like Ukrainian soldiers, or they were Ukrainian soldiers. It's one or the other. But with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well. Let me make sure that is off the screen good and well, because I don't want that showing up anywhere potentially. And so with that, we are on to the next. We'll also thank you, Sipes, for providing that once more, because it's helping us to kind of come up with a little bit better of a story about what was happening there.
All right. And up next, we have a $20 super chat. Speaking of PsyOps, from PsyOps, who says this question goes to @Casey in the chat. And PsyOps has been donating a ton of live chat questions recently, so Casey is the lucky winner this time. And also, PsyOps, thank you very much for the support once again. And Casey's question is, what does the enforcer believe Ukraine needs to turn the tide of the war and completely remove Russia to 1991 borders?
I would say, in my opinion, the single thing that could change the entire face and fate of this war would be the F-16C. Any variant of the F-16C, as long as it is able to be a multi-role F-16, which all of them should be able to, will change this war entirely. The ability for them to conduct air superiority and shoot down cruise and ballistic missiles is a massive plus. Also, their data link is a massive plus. Their ability to carry any kind of ground ordnance is one of the largest advantages it has in the war. A lot of American guided munitions can travel dozens of miles away from the original vehicle that launched it, including the Mavericks, including the GBUs, the JDAMs, and such. And so I would say that that would probably be the best system that could be sent to Ukraine to help them out would be the F-16 alone, just due to its multi-role abilities, and not only that, how competent it is in each role. It is truly a jack of all trades and a master of every. So with that, I hope that addresses that question fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support, Psyops, and sponsoring that question, because that's very kind of you. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And Psyops has sent in another $20 super chat and sponsors another question. This time it goes to the favorite rodent, Pack Rat. Thank you, Psyops, once again. And our favorite rodent has sent in a question. And Pack Rat says, other than passwords, would the Ukraine army be able to use light signals as a form of passwords if plausible? Example, as they did on old-time warships.
Yes, they could. That is a good question, Pack Rat. I would have to say they possibly could do something like that. However, if it is nighttime and they start sending light signals to each other, that could expose Ukrainian positions if they hadn't already been discovered. And so, in theory, they could, but there is some pros and cons to that. And the largest con is that they could be exposing positions that otherwise had not been found or located yet. So with that, I hope that does address the question, Pack Rat. Really good one, though, and that's a really smart idea. I think that would be applicable in areas of the front, well, in areas of Ukraine that aren't directly on the front line, but in rear defensive positions. They could probably use light signals amongst the rear units, but on the actual frontline units, light and light exposure should be limited to none at all, if preferable. Well, if optional. Light sources can give away an enemy, well, a friendly force or an enemy force, and that's why in World War I, fires were forbidden in trenches, because, of course, that could help the Germans to kind of figure out where they were and what they were doing in those trenches, so fires were completely forbidden. And so with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well, and thank you so much once again, Psyops, for sponsoring another live chat question. You have really been helping out a lot lately with keeping this channel running, and also I got to thank you so much for being so kind as to sponsor other people's questions just over and over and over. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope we addressed the support fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and we're not done with Psyops yet. He puts in another $20 super chat and says, this question goes to the first person to say Bayraktar in the chat. It's the deadliest weapon ever created, half Bayraktar, half tractor. And the winner apparently was Book Bandit, but I didn't ever get a question from Book Bandit. So if you'd like to send us that question, please put @Enforcer Matt, and I will return to it. So that way we'll honor Psyops' request. But thank you once again, Psyops, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you about this whole situation?
I gotta say, the whole entire situation is very gripping, very exhilarating, and we cannot wait to find out if Book Bandit sends back that question. If he does, we'll make sure to respond to it. And then, of course, I thank you so much once again, Psyops, for the support once more. That is the third time you've been called out tonight, and I gotta thank you so much once again, because without you and your support, and also your help as a moderator, encouraging people to hit that like button, this channel wouldn't have been able to make it where it is right now. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one we have is a $20 super chat from Avari Mandubratis, who says, anger guides this improv skit. And here's the prompt. He says, ignore if you need to. But here's the prompt anyway. Rambo infiltrates the Kremlin with the help of Ivan Draga and takes our Putin and Kadyrov, who are eating fake McDonald's food for dinner. Go, Don.
All right, so we'll give it a shot.
Don, this tastes like a shit, Don. It's okay, you know, it is tasty, period, bled.
Oh!
Hey, Paulie, check out these guys here in the Kremlin. They look like...
That is not Sylvester Stallone. That is not Sylvester Stallone. I don't know what the hell that was. That was like
Yo, Adrian, I eat a Big Mac. Yo, Adrian, I got him. You'll die. If he dies, he dies.
I don't know. I mean, like that prompt was so specific. I feel like a Stable Diffusion AI art generator right now, trying to come up with like the lines for that. But I do thank you so much for the support. I hope we tried our best there. And with that, thank you so much once again.
I hope you enjoyed the support, Don. It, of course, helps us to keep the channel running, Don. And that's without you, Don, it wouldn't be possible, Don.
And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for helping us to keep this thing going.
You know something I just thought about when you mentioned the AI generator for a minute?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder about Chat GPT. If you went and put a prompt into the AI and asked it, how can Ukraine win? I wonder if it would give you like a complex answer to how they could win.
I wonder.
I'm gonna do that on the side over here while we're going on to the next question. I'll let you know what it says.
All right. And so with that, while Matthew asked the Oracle of Wisdom, or the Magic Conch, what should we do? We are on to the next one.
And the next one we have is from Edgar Moreno, who puts in a $20 donation and says, please, Enforcer, take a question from the live chat, and please. And thanks.
And thank you so much for the support, Edward. And we will make sure to take a question from the live chat. And so with that, thank you so much for the support before we get to it. And thank you for helping this Lee Spring Army and the Enforcer to keep on rolling. If it wasn't for y'all, it would have never been possible from the start. And so with that, let's get to the live chat question.
And the live chat question goes to Donald Sawyers, who says, has the Bayraktar been around? I don't hear much of it anymore.
And is the Bayraktar still around? I haven't seen much of it. It is still around. You don't see much of it anymore because it's been classified by the Ukrainians as a state secret, and so they rarely ever release the video footage made by the Bayraktars. Whenever they do, it's in a large group, but we get to see that they are still being used all around Ukraine and that they've been deadly effective. So to answer that question, yes, it's just really that they've been classified now, so we don't really get to see much of what they do, although they are still effective. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again, Edward, for sponsoring that live chat, and I also hope that we were able to address it fairly well. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next one is going to go to John B. Rempel, who does not leave a comment. But John, thank you very much for being a longtime channel viewer. He's been around for ever since I've been doing this thing, actually. So thank you, John, once again. And Enforcer, what say you?
Excuse me.
Goodness.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. And of course, if it wasn't for you, this wouldn't have been possible. You have been around longer than Matthew, which is pretty interesting. And of course, I got to thank you so much once again for not only sticking the course with this channel and helping us to keep this thing going, but also enjoying it as well, because a lot of people either like this channel or they hate it. In a lot of people, from what we've been able to tell, like it. And I thank you so much for being one of those people and giving me the encouragement to keep this thing going, because of course, support is great, but it really means a lot to me to know that people actually do enjoy what we do and what we cover. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have felt as strongly motivated to get on here every single day and keep this thing running. And so I just got to thank you so much for enjoying this the way you do, so that way I can feel encouraged and motivated to keep this thing running through and through every single day. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And we were on to the next one.
All right. And also, our most recent bot, our bot of the hour, is Robert Martin. He says you were also full of it. TB is running rampant in the Ukrainian army, and Ukraine's secret police are rounding up deserters. Well, Robert, guess what? That kind of crazy talk is not allowed here, and that is entirely untrue. So, Enforcer, would you like to roast this guy?
Yeah. So Bob Martin, he's saying that we're full of it because the Ukrainian army is full of tuberculosis. I gotta tell you, if the Ukrainian army is as good as stamping out tuberculosis as we are idiots like you, I think they're in pretty good shape. On top of that, the Ukrainian secret police are rounding up deserters and killing them. Well, no, unfortunately, fortunately for the Ukrainians, unlike this channel where we're able to round up a bot within seconds and get rid of them like you, they don't do that to people in Ukraine. People are being abused for speaking Russian. I don't know about that, and if they are, that doesn't really make much sense, because a lot of people in Ukraine are duolingual, where they both speak Ukrainian and Russian. Yeah, Duolingo, Duolingual. But they speak both Ukrainian and Russian, so that doesn't make much sense, because then that means Ukraine is turned into a free-for-all mosh pit. So with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, if you're curious, I did go ask Chat GPT, and I saw some people asking, what is that? Well, it's a pretty advanced AI, which supposedly can talk like a human and come up with things like a human can. So I asked it, how can Ukraine win the war with Russia? And the bot told me it is not appropriate for me to provide advice or make suggestions about how Ukraine can win a war with Russia. Consult with your military strategist for a more informed perspective. So it took the cop-out answer and it didn't answer the question. So
You know what?
interesting.
You know what you should type in? Okay, asshole. Just to make
I
sure.
wonder if I said it. I said okay. Let me tell it.
Well, then
that.
Cybernet's going to take over the world's defense systems and start killing off humanity.
This thing blows my mind. Like it's apologizing now.
Also-
it's apologizing, and it's also saying, let's see. I feel bad for saying that now. It's actually apologizing very, very heartfelt.
Also, duolingual is now a word. I know it's bilingual. I want duolingual. Listen, if William Shakespeare could come up with thousands of words in the English language we still use to this day, I think I can come up with at least one. Just give me the one, all right? I mispronounced like so many freaking things. I just want this one to stand, all right? This is going to be a thing we say from now on. It's not going to be bilingual. It's going to be duolingual. So with that, we're on to the next one.
Oh my goodness. I told this bot, I said, I'm sorry, I was just joking. Please ignore. It said, no worries, I understand. Feel free to ask me. I'll do my best to help in the future. This is too much. But anyways, up next we have a $20 super chat from Deep8829, who does not leave a comment, sadly. So we can't address anything. But Deep, thank you very much for the support. And Enforcer, take it away.
And thank you so much for the support, Deep, in helping this channel to keep on running. I would have to say, I would love to respond to a comment that you put on your super chat, but I guess the silence alone is fairly deep. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, this wouldn't have been possible, ever. And I'm saying that a lot tonight. I'm always trying to come up with something new to say, and then I start sticking with it, and it becomes like the normal thing to say, like a broken record. But I do try and be as sincere as possible. Your support is incredibly appreciated. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope we addressed that fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $10 super chat from James Dunn, who says, sorry I've been gone for a few weeks. I have a new job as a communications engineer, so I've been training in the mornings, but back to second shift so I can watch again in LSA. And also, James, congratulations on the new job. That sounds like a hell of a title, I got to say. Communications engineer. Sounds like something that is like 5 pay grades over me, like in knowledge, but very cool.
And also, it sounds like a really, really cool job. I mean, like, I got to say, could you get us any information on that, Matthew? Like what is specifically entailed about that job? Like the exact details?
You can pull it up.
All right. So how do we spell it again?
It's a communications engineer.
All right, communications engineer, huh? Communications engineering. Oh. What does a communications engineer do? Communication engineers are responsible for the research, design, development, and production of communications equipment and systems. That sounds very smart. That sounds incredibly smart, actually. And I gotta say, it's really crazy to think that we have viewers like you here that watch this channel. It honestly blows me away whenever we hear about people who either are working at SpaceX or they formerly worked in the ATF or similar jobs, and you'll watch the stream. And it's a high honor to me to know that people as experienced and well-learned as y'all watch this stream and find it to be of some worth, and also support us to keep this thing running. So with that, I got to thank you so much once again for the support, and also doing such a cool job. That is a really, really cool job, actually, and very important as far as the military is concerned. Communication is one of the most important things in terms of the actual strategies that they implement and making sure that they're executed properly. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and long live the Least Spring Army. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
Right, and also we did get a question from Book Bandit. The question is, now that we are seeing heavy armor in Poland, do you think more Western nations will send tanks now?
I think we will see that more Western nations send tanks. It appears that the Germans are, of course, waffling. The British are sending the tanks. We don't know about the Finns. The Finns and the Poles united to send the tanks, so I don't know if that includes Finnish tanks. We'll most likely see perhaps the Norwegians send some tanks. We don't really know what kind of tanks they have, though. Norwegian tanks. Alright, so what do you got? Norway? Norway. Oh, the beautiful Norway. Wow, that is a grenade launcher. Jeez, that thing looks like an AGS. Let's see here. Oh, they got the CV-90s. Really nice. They also have Leopard 2 A4s. I gotta say, man, the Scandinavian countries, they just beat everyone in the camo. Tanks, they only have Leopard 2s, apparently. They also have some, Mars, really, but they have 12 of them mothballed, and they also sent 3 of them to Ukraine via the United Kingdom. I didn't know that, actually. And then moving on down. So it looks like they only have Leopard 2 A4s. We could see that the Norwegians may send some of theirs. And how many of them do they have again? 52 in total, and 36 of them are operational. So there's a little bit of a gap there, maybe a dozen that they could send that could really help out. So with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well. We may see smaller countries like Norway start to donate some of their tank forces that they're no longer using. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope we answered that question fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
And also, Heather Fitzgibbon Psyops did nominate you for a question he donated to you, so feel free to send that to me, and I will add it to the spreadsheet. And up next, we have to return to a super chat. This one is from Deep8829, who said, Matt, I didn't have the chance to type something, so here I go. I was wondering if I could look up my YouTube history to see when I first picked up the stream. My guess is sometime in the week.
Sometime this week?
Sometime in the week.
Sometime in the week.
It couldn't be this week because Deep's been around forever.
Yeah, I was like, I think Deep's been around forever. I was like, it's longer than a week, man. I'll promise you that. But you should be able to look through your history. I think your history is usually saved indefinitely if you haven't cleared it. So you should be able to go into your YouTube history and just scroll around until you find it. So I wish you the best of luck. I feel like it's going to be quite a journey, if I remember correctly, with how long you've been around. It's going to be like months of looking. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the question fairly well, Deep. And also, thank you so much once again for being a Leaf Spring Army soldier. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right. And the next one is going to go to, let's see here, Mech Tactical, who puts in a $25 donation and says, man, war is cold on the mind, like a 16-second microwaved Alabama Hot Pocket. Can we please do a mental health Ukraine fundraiser heavy on the soldier and the PTSD?
Let's see, mental health Ukraine fundraiser heavy on the soldier and the PTSD. I would love to do one like that. I think the best one we could do is Revive Soldiers of Ukraine for that one. I think they're about the closest nonprofit we can run that can do something like that. And I always love the idea of doing fundraisers like this and cool stuff, but sadly, we are limited, and I always have to go through this explanation just so that way new viewers and old viewers alike understand the limitations that our channel has due to us making sure that everything is as safe as possible. And now YouTube has labeled, what the hell? Wow,
What is
that's
it?
weird. They've relabeled the monetization page to the earn category. Oh,
Earn?
Yeah, they've changed it to earn. That just sounds stupid. It was better under the monetization. Anyways, can't complain too much. I guess it's just life, But let me go find it. Wow, oh my god, they've made this really complicated now. So, earn. That sounds so stupid. Okay, anyways, here's our fundraiser page. These are all the fundraisers we've ever run, and YouTube manages all of these accounts and sends the money over to the fundraisers involved. So, you can see them all. Let's count them real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44. We run 44 fundraisers total, and all of them are on the Guide Star program. So watch this. I'll click Add Fundraiser. We create the fundraiser, and then we get options. But if I click out there, and we click this back on, you can see all of the different fundraisers that you can run. You can also type one in. So, it doesn't show up here, but you could type in, the Red Cross, and you'll get all of the nonprofits you can run through YouTube that have red in the name, like the American Red Cross. Or we can go to nonprofit data from guidestar.org, which is where YouTube gets all of their fundraising info from. So we get thrown to this website, and we can go and search any nonprofit in any category we want. However, GuideStar does not run a lot of nonprofit, well, they don't really run any nonprofits if they aren't registered 501(c)s here in the United States. So sometimes things like mental rehabilitation and things like that for Ukrainian soldiers is just really tough to run a fundraiser for because it's not in the GuideStar program. There's no specific fundraiser that does that specifically that we can do through there. Now, of course, there is always the argument that we could go and start running Patreons or PayPals or something like that, and we're not really a big fan of that idea because I'm one that's always into transparency and accountability, and that's just a really big thing about what we do on this channel because I want y'all to know that if y'all support us, it's clearly going to our channel, and if you're supporting Ukraine, it's clearly going to a nonprofit that supports Ukraine, one or the other. And we can't do that through PayPal or Patreon unless if we were to go through a massive headache and burden and probably spend more time trying to manage the fundraisers than we ever would running the streams. So a lot of streams would just have to get axed every week so that way we could manage that stuff to try and make sure that we could account for everything clearly and transparently, or we'd have to hire a massive team to do it, and then you know, everything becomes incredibly difficult because of that, and probably a lot of the fundraising that would happen through a Patreon or a PayPal would end up going into paying those people to account for it, and then that becomes redundant. So we can't, I don't really know of a specific fundraiser registered on guidestar.org that could do that, but if y'all would like to look around, this is one thing I will say. We will, like, and it's got to be clear. We will never run on our end a fundraiser that is through a Patreon or a PayPal or a Cash App or something like that. We just won't. But we will run something through GuideStar. So if y'all go into the guidestar.org and y'all can find a nonprofit that does help out Ukraine and is registered through this program that we can get on YouTube, we will do it. If it's not, we can't do it. That's just our going rule to make sure that our viewers stay safe, so that way they're never potentially scammed. Because, you know, believe it or not, there are people out there who are using this war to grift, and they'll sit there and go, "Hey, give me $20,000, I'll buy a drone and fly to Ukraine and use it." And then you give them $20,000, and they disappear off the face of the earth, and they never come back. And everyone lost $20,000, and that's the one thing we always want to avoid is people ending up getting pretty much grifted on. So with that, I hope that answers the question. Very good idea though, Mech Tactical, but if we can't find one through GuideStar, it's going to be really difficult for us to do. So if y'all would like to help with that, we would be more than happy to have people recommend guidestar.org nonprofits that we could run for. And so with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well, Mech Tactical. I hate that there is that limitation on us, but I always want to make sure that we keep, you know, the Lee Spring Army safe from potential scams, as one of the top priorities, because I would hate to abuse y'all's trust in us, and then end up, you know, pretty much supporting a scam or something. Kind of like the whole inherited titles, or whatever it was in Scotland that happened a while ago with them sponsoring people and, you know, YouTube channels that were highly accredited, greatly trusted by people. They would sit there and go, "Hey, you can buy like a square foot of ground in Scotland and get an official royal title," and it was all a lie. You know, we don't want to fall down that avenue or that category where people look back and they're like, "Wow, we really just got had. We really just got hoodwinked, you know, bamboozled and all that." But with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And thank you so much, Mech Tactical, for being around forever and helping us to keep this thing running. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
All right. And also, just a heads up, we have SpaceX and Taco Bell in the house. Yeah!
Really?
But yes, we do. We have both. That's a hell of a combo.
Like it's an account named SpaceX and Taco Bell, or is it like a guy from SpaceX and someone from Taco Bell? Like, I'm not.
Well, no, they're employees. We have employees of SpaceX and also employees of Taco Bell in the chat. They're listening at work.
Oh, that's cool. I wonder if it's. I've got to be honest with y'all. I know this is kind of an odd take, and I also joke on Taco Bell a good bit. I kind of really like Taco Bell. I think it's pretty decent food for the price. You know, you get what you pay for. And I don't really complain about it much. Also, really cool to hear we have a guy in SpaceX. I'm wondering, Matthew, can SpaceX manage to help Taco Bell to construct the world's largest burrito?
Oh yes. Well, I tell you what, we do have a super chat from the SpaceX folks. We have a $20 super chat from SPA_XER. Who says, "We listen to your stream in the background every night at SpaceX. Thank y'all for y'all's hard work and Starship launch soon." And that's very cool.
And that is so cool. That's actually really cool to hear that we have people working on such a innovational program, such as the Starship program. It's really a program that I'm heavily behind, and I think that space travel will be a thing of the future. And if y'all allow me for a moment to rabbit hole and dream about what I think the future will be in the next 40 years, here's what I think will most likely begin to occur. In 40 years' time, a lot of the United States is going to be going through some pretty tumultuous economic times. If you think it's a little tough now, it will get a little bit tougher, but it's not going to collapse the country. The tumult is going to come because we're already seeing the rise of automation at normal minimum wage jobs. For example, now McDonald's restaurants are getting completely automated to the point there really isn't any workers in them rather than techs to make sure the machines are working. So a lot of people are going to end up with a lack of jobs. And this is going to start throwing up the question of, well, we have so many people alive, but there's really no way for us to give them all jobs. What do we do with them? Like what goes on with that? That will become an inevitable problem just due to the mechanization and automation of most industries in the United States, and also the exportation of our, I guess you could say, production industries overseas, or the complete non-existence of them due to the lack of demand. But moving on from that, we'll also see that around 40 years' time, resources are going to start becoming a little bit more scarce. If you don't know right now, a lot of the oil and natural gas industries in the United States, the reason why fracking has become such a big deal is because a lot of the deposits in the United States, the original ones that we used to extract natural gas and oil out of, are starting to become depleted. And so fracking and extracting the shell from these deposits are one of the ways that we're able to go back to old deposits that have been quote-unquote depleted and continue to get some stuff out of them for now. But in the future, we'll see that starts to become a little bit of an issue. And so we're probably going to have to start traveling either into space, if it's cost efficient, of course, and resource efficient, to be able to try and gather up enough resources to bring back to Earth. And recycling will become somewhat more of a major deal. I'm not talking about like your paper bags and stuff. That's not really the recycling I'm talking about. I'm talking about the recycling of, I guess you could say, heavy materials like steel, aluminum, things like that. That recycling avenue will become incredibly large. It's already becoming large right now if you look at metallurgy and how we produce steel in the United States. A lot of it isn't even new iron that we're making into steel that comes out of a mine. Most of it's just being recycled from old, I guess you say, worn out vehicles and equipment that was made of steel, and we melt it back down and we create new steel ingots and then molds and so on. So we'll probably see that we're going to be going into those directions further on in the future. That may as well just be inevitable at this point. Also, edgy number one said fusion power will probably be a big deal then, and I believe I would have to agree with you, because we're already seeing that fusion power has entered its infancy, and we may see that oil and natural gas dependence may disappear for the large part entirely, and that most countries, by that point, if they can afford it, will be using fusion power to operate most of their grids. Most things will convert to electricity because of that, because electricity will be so cheap and affordable, and also there will be such a plentiful abundance of it by 40 years' time in the future that there really won't be a need to extract fossil fuels, because it'll just be cost inefficient compared to the price of electricity. But, this is all just shots in the dark. No one really knows how the future will turn out, even in 40 years. I'm just taking some pot shots at what I'm thinking the future will look like. It won't be all sunshine and rainbows, but it'll certainly be an interesting time to live through. But with that, I hope that does address my idea of what the future will look like fairly well. And it's really cool to hear that you were part of it in a way, at least my harebrained idea of it. But thank you so much once again. And it's super cool, Matthew. It's just so cool to think that there are people at SpaceX actually watching this. I wonder if y'all are at Boca Chica.
I wonder, or are they out in Texas?
Oh, well, Boca Chica is in Texas.
I know.
Two in Italy, one in Rome. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $50 super chat from Daniel Lee, who says, as someone with a lot of experience on F-16, I can say its capabilities are limited to Ukrainian pilots' training. It takes years to train on different missions and even longer to train to train a pilot on SEAD missions. Keep up the good work, and hello from Eglin Air Force Base in Florida.
And hello to Eglin Air Force Base. We have driven through that air base many times before. Really interesting place. And let's see. Yeah, here we go. Here's Eglin Air Force Base right over here.
And they are at Boca Chica.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's so cool. Oh man, if you can DM me pictures, I would love to see like the bays. I gotta tell you, I'm a huge geek about what SpaceX has been doing in the industry, and it's just really cool to believe that the that the Starship is really getting towards some of its final phases of actually doing its first orbital test flight, and I just can't wait to see it. I'm going to be watching it when it happens, I hope. But getting back to this, really cool to hear that you're from Eglin. We've been there, well, we've driven through there many times. We've also been to the little Air Force Armament Museum right here, I think twice. Moving on from that, though, let's see what's at Eglin. Old Eglin. F-35. It's not a KC-135 like last time, or KC, the other fuel tanker. I forgot it. Whoops. But here's some C-30s. And what else is over here? Oh, I think that's a test version of the F-15. You know, one of the ones that I guess do the atmospheric tests or something similar, but it's in that white livery.
Oh.
And also, we have this interesting little plane here. I don't know what the hell that is. I
really, what is that?
It's a little stick man or something, but really cool. I mean, like, this is really neat. And also, I would say that is very true. It does take a while to train them on SEAD missions. I don't really know, so I'm just taking your word for it, to be honest with you. I'm not going to act like I really knew. But at the same time, we have seen that they've already been equipped with AGM-88 harms and that the Ukrainians have somehow been using them. So perhaps there is already some kind of existent knowledge of how to do anti-radiation or SEAD missions. It's just that they've never had the equipment to pull off those missions. But still, very good points, I would have to say, Daniel. And thank you so much once again for the support and telling us some of the limitations there are with the F-16 and how it may be used by Ukraine, because while I'm a huge fan and supporter of the F-16, it does have its own limitations. Everything does have a few cons, and I would say the F-16 in Ukrainian hands may have a few, but I would feel like the advanced level and the capabilities of the F-16 may be able to counter that in a way and at least provide a little bit of a cutting edge, at least compared to what they are using now. But with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And next up, we have a super chat, this time once again from Psyops, who puts in a $20 donation once again, and who says, this question goes to Heather Fitzgibbon. And let's see here. I don't think I've received a question from Heather, and let's see if she is still online. She is still online, but haven't gotten a question. So Heather, if you want to send in a question to me, I'll return to this one. But in the meantime, Psyops, thank you very much. And we're going to move on to our next one, which is from Whoa, Bro, who puts in a $10 donation and says, the reason why U.S. vehicles are tan in color is because it's a baseline color to paint other camo colors onto.
Interesting. That's actually pretty cool to know. Also, it is the color that the United States used a lot because we were in the Middle East and desert or arid areas for a pretty good while. But still, that is really cool to hear that it may just be primer. So we just sent them into Iraq with primer. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well and also really interesting to hear. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from John L., who says, Igor Frankenweenie is a Disney character. Look up images. Uh-oh. It's a Disney character with images. Uh-oh. This could be copyright.
Igor Frankenweenie. So, it is. I mean, wow, man. This guy looks like Prigozhin. Jeez, man.
Where does it say Igor?
It says...
Edgar Igor. Oh, what? Edgar Igor.
Oh, that's cheap. Also, this guy looks like me whenever I see someone in the Barnes and Noble chugging an entire Elmer's glue in the cooking aisle. That was me. Not that that's a particular story or anything, but yeah, that's actually a thing. Really weird looking though. I'd have to say. Also, the costume, I don't really think that stands the test of time. I just
hell no.
I just gotta personally say myself, I don't think you would be the life of the party if you showed up in that thing. Also, with your eyes sticking through the mask like that, that just looks terrifying. But with that,
$3.99. The costume is like literally $4,
and it's out of stock. These officially licensed. I don't think Disney would ever license these. These are horrendous.
I seriously doubt it.
I seriously do doubt it. And oh look, it's Beetlejuice or something, I think. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you for sharing that with us because I had no idea.
All right. And up next, shout out to Silver Earth and James Bankhead for each putting in a $10 super chat. We do appreciate you very much, both of you. I was just checking the live chat over there. I thought I saw something, but never mind. But Silver Earth and James, thank you so much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank y'all so much, Silver Earth and James, for the support. Because if it wasn't for viewers like y'all, this would have never been possible. And y'all didn't throw in a comment, but I think y'all supported us so much before that I guess y'all have no more comments to add for now, and y'all just want to help us to keep this thing going. But regardless, I got to thank y'all so much once again, because if it wasn't for y'all, we would have never made it this far. And so with that, thank y'all once again, and thank y'all for being soldats of the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the... I think one of y'all may actually... I think Silver Earth may be an old guard. Honestly, I think both of them may be old guards. So we'll actually say y'all are on old guards or honorary old guards if y'all were soldats. And so with that, thank you once again to both of y'all for the support, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, returning to PsyOps' $20 super chat. It doesn't look like Heather Fitzgibbon had a question for us, so we're going to donate this one to the live chat. And this one's going to go to Tasman006, who says the UK is giving Ukraine 4 times Apache helicopters. Ukrainian possibly crews trained. I saw it on the Mirror UK.
That is true. Well, actually, hang on. I don't know if that is true. Hold on a second. British helicopters. I don't know why I said that right off the bat. So, news. Britain sending helicopters to Ukraine for first time. They sent Sea Kings back in November 23rd of 2022, but we don't see any news beyond that pertains to, wait, hang on. Oh, that's from the Mirror. And you have to take that with a grain of salt because the Mirror is kind of a tabloid-ish thing. But let's see here. Apache.
I saw it earlier as well, and I could only find the Mirror, and also I believe it was the Guardian was the other source, but I didn't see any really solid, reputable news outlets reporting on it.
Let's see. Sending 4 Apaches will be sent, and they will follow 10 Challenger 2 main battle tanks. Back to West supply tank and aircraft. Let's see here. 1,000 tanks. Let's see, we're sending most modern version, which can take out multiple targets in seconds. I don't know. I mean, it's not really giving a lot of citations. It's just, I don't know. Let's go look. British support for Ukraine. So let's go to gov.uk. Let's see what they have to say. United, find out more about UK's response. So let's find out. We got a whole page. Legal sham referendums. The British love the word sham. It's one of their things. Like I like it though. I like the word. UK.
You know what happens when the sham is really large?
It's a flim flam.
No, they call it a ShamWow.
Oh, get the hell out of here! Get out of here.
Wow, ShamWow. Who was that salesman that did that? He also did the slap chop.
Yeah, it's a slap chop. Yeah, you slap your nuts, you got one slap chop. You slap your nuts twice, you got yourself a salad. You slap it 3 times, you got yourself a mince.
You love my nuts.
You'll love my nuts. You'll love my salty nuts. But I can't believe that guy got away with those jokes, man. But yeah. Anyways, I can't find anything about it on gov.uk, and I feel like that kind of be a big deal. But with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and we'll try and look into that a little bit more. And also, ENT said I will not trust the Mirror, and that's kind of my reluctance into believing that, because if the Guardian and the Mirror say it, it's not really true. It may just be sham, scam, and flim flam. But with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
Hokey Redneck said, that was terrible. That was the whole point, Hokey. It was so cringe, I had to do it. But anyways, real quick, we have a super live chat from PsyOps who says, could you do an update on the Ukrainians in Oklahoma?
I would love to, PsyOps, but I don't know about the specific details of Ukrainians in Oklahoma. I guess they did become honorary Oklahomies if they're in Oklahoma, but beyond that, we don't really know much about them. Also, I'm sure that many of them are really interested in the town of Broken Arrow, which is a call sign in the military, saying either things are bad, we need all the air support. I've heard 2 things. Either we've lost a nuclear weapon in a Broken Arrow, or they need all the air support that they can get if a Broken Arrow is called. One or the other. I don't really know which one it is, because it's almost always just one or the other. But with that, I do thank you for the support, Sipes, and I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. Also, the Seminole Nation had an interesting house right there. It's like the up house. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Roderick Thomas, who says, "Pizza fun, guys," and take a question from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support to the Pizza Fund. You're going to help us to eat pizza. Like seriously, Roderick. You're going to help us to eat that pizza. And so thank you so much once again for the support to the Pizza Fund. And let's get a question from the live chat. I was kind of at a loss there for a second. Like, my brain froze up because the lozenge things or whatever they are, they're wearing off. So my throat's starting to hurt. But let's get to the live chat. Lozenge.
But yes, anyways, moving on to the live chat, we have one from Sarah A, who says, "Don't you think Ukraine's hands are tied somewhat by NATO as far as firing deep into Russia, unless it's at a military target?"
Yes, and I wouldn't really know what if their hands are tied at attacking civilians. I would say that's good, and I would also question why in the world would the Ukrainians want to attack civilians in the first place. So it's good to know that if NATO is a limiting factor in that regard, that the Ukrainians would only be targeting military targets and not civil targets, because while I have a massive disdain for the Russians and really the Russian public at large now, I wouldn't really want to see the Ukrainians just start obliterating citizens in Russia on a day-to-day basis. I may be misunderstanding your question, but that's the way it came off to me. And I was like, well, we wouldn't really want them to be hitting anything but military targets, because hitting civilians, killing citizens of any country doesn't really win a war. But with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one we have here is from Jim Toy, who puts in a $10 donation and says, "Because of the great work you do, I'll make the donation anyway." And to give some context, he wanted you to pronounce the Welsh city with the longest name, but I told him like that was never going to happen, so he sent in $10 anyway.
Well, let's see if we can. Longest Welsh town name pronunciation. Now, I'm not one to disappoint, so let's see what's the longest one. So, we want the whole thing. We want the whole freaking thing. Dang it. Lenfar parquing gehorin gehi quarntrop olandi shishile gorgorgor. I hope that was right. I try and get it. I tried to do it like the song y'all may have heard before. But I hope that's our best attempt, and I know you said you would support us anyways, even if we didn't do that, but hearing that you wanted us to, I tried my best, and I hope that it sounded good, or at least passable. I'm sure that someone's going to say, "I'm Welsh, and I don't like how you did that," and then I did it like a Scottish accent to a Welsh person, so I'm sure now I pissed off the Scottish people too. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much for supporting us, and I hope you enjoyed me trying to do that.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $10 super chat from James Lynn, who says, "New report. UK to send AH-64 Apaches to Ukraine. Also, do you follow Intel Crab? He's also a student of the University of Alabama. U.S. Prepo stocks are usually in Desert Camo."
Interesting. And thank you for once again for clarifying that apparently just normal U.S. stocks are just in Desert Camo or the primer. And also, interesting here that we heard that the AH-64s are being sent by Britain again. I don't know if that's like a right now, like we're not really sure if that's kind of like a Hindustan Times situation where they go, you know, the Ukrainians are like getting lambasted, or the Ukrainians just enter Moscow, you know, because they do that in the Hindustan Times. I don't know if that's something that the Mirror and the Guardian are kind of doing right now, and that's getting spread around. We'll keep an eye out to see if that information continues to spread, because considering that an Apache is an incredibly advanced helicopter, one of the most advanced in the Western world, I feel like a larger focus would have been put on those being sent to Ukraine than Challenger 2s even. So we'll be keeping an eye out for that. We'll be looking for it. And I thank you so much once again for support, and also clarifying that the tanks just kind of do come in that color. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And the next one we have is from Terrence Custer, who puts in a $10 donation and says, "Howdy. For the electrical fund, your bill must be up there."
And thank you for the support. And the electrical bill probably is up there. So with that,
what made him think that?
I wonder. I mean, like I was kind of thinking it may be a little high, but I don't think so. We run a pretty light program around here. Just a couple of computer monitors, some computers with lights on, and I don't know. I mean, I do thank you so much for the support. Man, they sounded more shocked to me. But I do thank you so much for the support and helping this thing to keep on rolling. And also helping the lights to stay on, literally. And you actually said it, man. He literally said, the electric bill must be high. And we're always saying, thank you. You keep the lights on. He's literally helping us to keep the lights on with that one.
Yes.
So with that, we're on to the next one. Also, I see a lot of people talking about their ancestry in the live chat. And once again, just to reiterate, we are 90% British. Not getting into the breakdown of that. We're 90% British. And then I think, well, no, 89% British. Like 9% Swedish, 2% Norwegian. And so with that, we're now on to the next one.
And the next one is a $120 super chat from Font Freud 1. Thank you very much. That is very generous of you. And I about choked on my Ludens just a second ago when I saw it. And that's why I kind of sounded a little stressed when I said that. But thank you very much.
And I do have to thank you so much for the support, Font Freud 1. Because if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And you sent that in euros. And so I'm wondering, Font Freud, where are you from? You want to let us know? I would love to know where you're from. Don't dox yourself, but let us know what town or country you're from. We'll take a look, see, yeah? Because I'd like to see where you're from. I don't know why I'm saying that in a British accent, because he's obviously not from Britain. You know, he's from the European Union. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment the support fairly well. There's no comment. With that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
Also, Psyops told me, please let views know about moderation politics. And please no politics in the chat, folks. We try to keep it clean in here.
Yes,
and politics is very dirty. So we're going to have to abstain from that. But Enforcer, what were you trying to say?
We don't allow politics because on the internet there's this very fascinating phenomenon that I call le radical, where if we allow politics of any kind, the radicals start coming in. And, you know, I'm not talking about one side or the other. I'm just talking about all the radicals, whether they be like, you know, the left or the right. They'll come in here, and then this becomes battle royale, and then after a while one of them will win, and then the other side will go, oh no, it's just filled with, you know, let me think, what are the two main things that people say, oh, they're filled with libtards or fascists or something like that. It'll be one or the other, and I don't want that. This is a channel that supports Ukraine. We don't really care about political affiliations. As long as you support Ukraine, you're on their side, and that's all that matters. So we're not trying to get into the whole American thing or the whole British ordeal, the Conservative and the Labor Party or the Republicans and the Democrats. We're not here for that. We're here to support Ukraine. So either you support Ukraine or you don't. And that's really all we're concerned about. And so with that, we're on to the next one. But I would ask that y'all refrain from politics because it just leads to fights. That's all we've ever seen. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $10 super chat from Richard Philpott, who says, my comments were a bit off the hook, but my heart's in the right place and I do what I can. And I don't know which comments Richard is talking about, but I'm kind of horrified to think about what was said. So hopefully it wasn't too bad, but thank you very much for the support.
And I got to thank you so much once again for the support. It helps us to keep this thing running. And also, I don't think you've said anything really off color or off tone, Richard, from what I can remember. But I do thank you so much for the support. And I thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support and helping this thing to keep on rolling. Also, wait a minute, is Deep from... Oh, hang on.
He said he's from the swamp. He said, y'all are smart, so I'm sure you can figure out where that is.
That's probably near, that's probably near Mobile, I would be honest with you.
I was wondering if he was talking about Alabama at all. I thought maybe he was talking about Montgomery, like over there near Pike Road. I mean, that's considered a swamp where we're from.
He may be from the bayou, that's a big swamp.
Yeah, that's a huge swamp.
It's a sizable one, to say the least. Oh, look, there's a town called New Iberia. Does it look like Spain? I wonder. Let's find out. Oh, it kind of does. Holy moly, wow.
Somewhat.
They actually tried. I thought they were actually kind of shocked. That kind of looks like a church in Spain. A little. I mean, like, it's very loose familiarity, but kind of. Anyways, with that, we're on to the next one before I get distracted by the New Iberia.
Yeah, somebody said DC. I've never heard DC is referred to as a swamp except in like a political sense, but Foggy Bottom maybe.
We're gonna drain the swamp. We're gonna start off by, and you know what's interesting? DC is actually a swamp, though. Did you know that, Matthew?
I did. That's part of the reason why they call it Foggy Bottom.
Yeah, and also that's why that's also why this tidal basin exists. Everything beyond the Washington Monument at a point in time was literally a swamp. So they created this giant program that turned, I guess you could say, the tidal basin into a thing. Also the West Potomac Park, also the East Potomac, the Thomas Jefferson Memorial. All of this is built on a swamp. The White House was actually like right here where the ellipse is. And that was kind of like the edge of where the swamp began. And presidents would just literally walk out of the White House and just go swimming because it was pretty much like right there on the Potomac. And now
So they were literally swamp creatures?
yeah, kind of like back in the day. Yeah, I guess you could call them that. And also another interesting thing. Nowadays, the Potomac is so toxic that if you fall in it, you got to go to the hospital because you probably got like a million diseases in you now. But that's with every,
nasty.
Yeah, that's with every major river though. Like you can go all the way over to Rome, to the Tiber River, and if you fall in the Tiber River in Rome, even in ancient times, you were practically dead already. Like you were just going to die from the diseases you got from the exposure to the water. But anyways. Actually, that's not that true because they'd still use it a little bit for certain things. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
We were wrong. Deep was talking about something related to sports called the swamp. Sadly, that is like the least knowledgeable topic we're versed in, so we're definitely not going to get that right. I'm assuming you're not talking about Alabama or Auburn, because those really aren't in swamps.
Also, Matthew, you're like doing this like swallowing thing like right in the microphone, like it sounds like a juicy over there. Like it's been sounding like that for 20 seconds. So just letting you know. And
well,
also, because I gotta tell you, man, that's like a huge pet peeve of mine. When I heard that, like I was cringing over here, and I was like, "Ew!" I was like, "That sounds gross." But let's see. Tom Exman actually said, "Can you name local fundraisers that help the Selma tornado victims?" Unfortunately, I don't really know who is helping them out, but I've actually driven down there today, and the situation is bad. The tornado was terrible, and I'm sure I didn't make it to Selma. We were around the Wetumpka area, but it was bad. I mean, like it literally cut about a quarter-mile swath or a half-mile swath of trees, just clean out. Everything was gone in a straight row. It was like almost a logging company had come through and just clear cut a straight line for miles through that area of Alabama. It was pretty bad. Unfortunately, I don't know who could help out though, but I'm sure some people may know nonprofits that can. But the Red Cross would probably be the best instance of one. The American Red Cross would probably be one. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we're on to the next one.
And the next one we have is from Gramer, who puts in a $7 super chat and says, "Is Yevgeny Prigozhin, founder of the Wagner PMC, fair game to be taken out by special forces? And why don't you think there's been any attempts to neutralize him thus far?"
He is probably fair game. The reason why is because he's a little too close to the top of Putin's circle, so it may cause a diplomatic situation or an incident with Russia, although he's fair game. So that may be the hesitation and the reason being for that. So with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And Deep was talking about the University of Florida, by the way. That's considered a swamp.
The swamp. Let's pull that up. The University of Florida. University. Oh, thank you. You're so helpful, Google. University of Florida in Gainesville. Holy moly, that is just a swamp. Look at that.
That's a swamp right there.
That is a swamp. We need to drain the swamp. We need to get rid of all the swamp creatures in the swamp. It's absolutely nasty. I was down there. I can't do the voices good tonight because my voice hurts, but with that, that's actually crazy.
Do the students qualify as swamp creatures?
Why are you asking that about everyone? How do you do they qualify for the swamp creature? But
I'm trying to find the swamp creatures that were referred to a year ago.
Well, I mean, they're somewhere around here. I'm sure we'll find them eventually.
I guess they're up north.
What, swamp creatures in the north? Are you out of your mind?
I think you're zooming close to the swamp creatures somewhere around here. I smell them. Washington, I think.
Washington, D.C. You know what's kind of interesting?
What? What's interesting?
About Washington, D.C.? The roads.
That's where the swamp creatures live?
The roads.
Oh, the pentagon or pentagram it creates or something like that?
Yeah, all that stupid stuff. Like when you read about the history of Washington, D.C., they're like, we wanted roundabouts. That would be cool. So can we create, like, angular roads to just kind of make neat sight lines and stuff. And the architect was like, "Yeah, sure." And then 200 years later, someone's talking about it's the devil. it's like, anyways, we're on to the next one.
There's always like an ounce of truth to these conspiracy theories, but it's never like truly what they say it is. But
I mean,
it
like
is what it is.
no, there's like everyone always says there's an ounce of truth to everything, but if your conclusion
Oh,
is
there usually
flawed-
is.
Oh yeah, but if your conclusion is flawed, it doesn't matter how many ounces of truth you have, because it's like that's just dumb. Like that's like going to Paris and going, oh, you know, the streets, the main streets, they shape a face. You know, it's like. It's probably coincidence. You know, that's like people looking at Mars and they see the face, you know, like the face thing that's made in the mountains. They're like, there's a man under there. It's like, no. It's like, yeah, it looks like a face, but why the hell would there be a giant man under the surface just poking his face out of the crust? It doesn't make any sense. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $7 super chat from Honeybee Care, who says, for the Monday Beer Fund, F-16s next to support the Bradley mech units. Remember the Alamo and Oklahoma sucks. Grab a question from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support. Also for the Alamo thing. The Alamo is pretty cool, but the sad thing about it is that it's in the middle of San Antonio. But what's really sad about it, I'm just kidding about that whole thing. Like, San Antonio, I have never been there, so I don't know if it's bad or not. I don't know if it's good or not. But I'm trying to find the Alamo. Where the hell did it go? It was like somewhere in the middle of the city, right? There it is. There's the Alamo. In the southern part of Texas, near the town of San Antonio. And so, anyways, the Alamo building, it was kind of like around here. It's like pretty much in the city block. But over the years, people would come here as tourists, and they'd be like, wow, this is the Alamo. And they take out a little chip, and they would chip off parts of the adobe wall. And so, eventually, the whole entire mission was brought down to just the main building right here that you see. Right there, this side little compound, and that was it. That's all that's left because everyone came through and literally chipped away everything else. So kind of sad, but kind of neat. And also, it's really small when you see it in person. It's not that big. Anyways, with that, I thank you so much for the support. I cannot side in the Texan-Oklahoman war. I will not. All I'll say is Oklahomans are Oklahomies, and Texans are Texans. But with that, let's get to the live chat. And thank you once again for the support.
And the live chat question goes to Silent Operator, who says, is the Kremlin considered a military target?
The Kremlin is not considered a military target. It's a diplomatic or a political target. And there would be no militaristic value in destroying the Kremlin. Also, it would be destroying a historical building. I believe it is an UNESCO World Heritage Site. And that may pose some issues. And also, it still poses no real military value. So with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Thomas Kruger, who says, LSA forever, and take a question from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support. LSA forever, and hopefully it will stay around forever. And we will make sure to get one from the live chats as well. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And whenever somebody says LSA forever, it makes me think of like the gang, like LSA forever, you can't leave, the LSA gang.
Yeah, kinda, in a way, maybe. But anyways, let's get to the live chat.
And the question goes to Andrew Angel, who says, what's the word about the U.S. possibly sending the GLSDB to Ukraine?
It seems as though the Turks have already sent a version of their own, and we think the United States may be getting close to sending one, but we don't really have a lot of exact information on that ground launch small diameter bomb. We just have information about the Turkish one, which has been there, and we have seen it on video in use. And so with that, I hope that does address the question, at least with the knowledge we have right now about them. And with that, we're on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Ubercon, who says, you worry too much about your voice. You're doing a great job.
And thank you so much for the support. But I worry about my voice because, you see, a lot of people complain, or, well, not really complain. They always critique it. They always go, it's always very high pitch, very active sounding. It sounds like you're trying to sell me something. Or back in the day, you sound like you're covering a funeral. Like, don't do that. And it's, I am all for jokes, but, you know, it's something I'm always having to concern myself with because everyone in the world always wants to tell me everything about how to run the channel. You know, that's like my family, viewers, anyone I run into. They've always got two bits And so I'm always worrying about everything because I get flack for anything I do at the end of the day, because everyone's always got a say. So with that, we're on to the next one. But thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from White Lightning 777, who says, "Do we have footage of the Bradleys, tanks, or IFVs operating within Ukraine yet?"
No, we do not. And it's making me think that they may be in the process of being delivered to Ukrainian units. They may be in some training with them. We're fairly certain that they are in Ukraine, though, because we already saw the trains making their way to Ukraine about a week ago. So I feel like we're just not seeing them around there yet. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from 907 Pike, Alaska, who says, "Susie, the stunning silver salmon, I can't believe it. It's back. It says soon she will see the Russian sailors at the bottom of the sea."
Is that really so, like, the return of, like, Sylvia the Sockeye salmon right there and everything?
It's 907 Pike saying it. I think it was S Sylvia or something last time saying it. But, you know, I think they have to convene a meeting, like a convention of the salmon, in order to like make a public statement like this. But it's pretty close.
Interesting. And so I gotta thank you so much for the support. Welcome back to the Sockeye Salmon Nation. And also, that's just really cool. And so with that, thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, big shout out to WL for putting in a $5 super chat, along with Bodine Barker for doing the same thing. So thank you both very much for the support, and we appreciate it very much. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Super Null Ish, I think, who puts in a $5 super chat and says, goodness, that was at least a 9-story building, and the collapsed gap was at least 3 apartments wide, possibly 4. That's upwards of 35 apartments.
And that is true, and it appears that there were dozens of people inside of all of those apartments as well, which will line up with most of those people being home at the time that strike occurred, which is also incredibly unfortunate to add to the mix. But with that, thank you so much for the support, and also providing that information on the dimensions of the Khrushchevka building for us. And with that, we're on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support and also sharing that with us.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Paul Fitzgerald, who says, "Hope funny is not lost, but it shows Tucker Breaking Bad digging holes where nothing is."
And I thank you for the support, and I don't really know what it still means, but I was kind of thinking that it was a hit at the Tucker guy on a certain news channel, and I was like, yeah, I guess that's kind of like him. I thought that's the way I took it. But I guess that would still be funny in a way if I knew what the joke was. But with that, thank you once again for the support. Also, who the hell? Well, let me. Oh, hang on, Matthew. I think I've seen this name before in the live chat.
What is it? Who is it?
One second. Huh. Interesting. Michael Navarro.
He said, "Ukraine are cheaters." I said, "How are they cheating?" He said, "Hand to hand does Ukraine people." What the hell does that mean?
What the hell? I don't even think he knows how to speak English.
This is wild. I'm waiting to see what else is written.
I think it's about to be something stupid. But with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Ukraine, F. Putin, who says, "Any possibility to link vids you can't show on YouTube to maybe Discord or Telegram? You guys are doing a great job. Thank you for your time and effort, and Slava Ukraine."
And thank you so much for the support. And I would do something like that. It is an idea I've had. However, it adds a little bit to the workload because I'll have to title it and then put it somewhere, and that could add an additional 20 to 30 minutes to what I do each day. And I've got to be honest, I've got to try and pace myself the best I can because I'm going to college 5 days a week now. It's not online where I just have to focus on the online parts of the class. It's now also in person as well, which is really adding a lot to the table. A lot to the plate more so. And so I've got to make sure to try and cut things down the best I can to make sure I can get to everything in a day. And I'm still not able to get to everything in a day. Like I've got to schedule things well in advance now to just try and find time anywhere. But with that, I thank you for the support. It is a pretty good idea, and I will consider that and try and see about doing that. But I can't make any guarantees. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Raj Kapoor, who says, how long can Russia prolong this war before its economy begins to crumble? We know new oil sanctions are coming in February, and Urals are selling at $50.
And I would say that the Russian economy will probably be able to hold on for... I honestly cannot tell you. I would love to tell you, and I'm trying to come up with a number here, but I can't even crystal ball on that one, because the Russian economy has survived much longer than I thought it would, which is very interesting. I don't know how they're doing it. There must be a lot of book cooking and things like that going on for the economy to survive, but I don't really know how, and I don't really know how much longer it can go on. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that one, and I think it could be really anyone's guess. But with that, thank you once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Dark Warrior 137, who says, if you read as you read, you have to read to read it as you read and not read.
Well, thank you for the support, and that's true. You have to do all those things when trying to read. And it's always tough to read and reread and reread. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. Simply put, to say the least. But thank you once again.
All right. And also, the bot has one last chance to tell me his hourly wage before he is booted from the live chat. If he says the hourly wage that he makes at his shilling job here, he might get to stay for another minute or so. But up next, we have a $5 super chat from Margaret Hemsley, who says, just because your college fees are astronomical, don't have any intriguing questions, so find one that is, please.
Thank you so much for the support. The college fees are actually quite expensive. It costs like thousands of dollars a semester to go to college, including the books and all, which is kind of sad, you know, because it's expensive. But still, I thank you so much once again for the support, and thank you so much for helping us to continue to go to college so that we can go to law school and do all that fun stuff. And with that, let's get to live chat.
And also, Psyops, go ahead and take them out, man. You got the order. Go ahead and take them out. But anyways, the live chat goes to Miss Disa, who says, is Moscow worried not just about attack from Ukraine, but from other neighboring countries?
I would say not so much, because they're not at war with neighboring countries. Not many neighboring countries would have a weapon that has the range to reach Moscow, and if they do, they're NATO members, so they're not going to go and do anything wild or radical. So I would say no, it would have to be entirely because of Ukraine alone and the threat that they pose to Moscow. And so with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Rocco, World Domination, who says, I also use Duolingo to become duolingual.
And thank you so much for the support. And also, I have to say that I, too, as a duolingual person, have to appreciate people who use Duolingo. I'm just kidding, they're not a sponsor. But, Duolingo, have you ever wanted to learn a foreign language in your free time? Have you ever just been sitting around and thought, wow, it would be really cool to speak Latin because I watched a show that was about Rome, and so now I really want to dedicate thousands of hours into learning some kind of a dead language? Well, we have just the app for you with Duolingo. Duolingo can teach you many languages, some of them nearly extinct, like Latin, Klingon, Welsh, and Scots Gaelic. Not only can we do that, but we can also teach you the vogue languages that are in this current century, such as German, Polish, Chinese, or as they say, Mandarin, English, and not only those, but Ukrainian. On top of that, Duolingo will also remind you that your family is being held in a dark, dingy basement somewhere at the Duolingo headquarters, so that way you can know that language is a very important thing to learn, and you cannot miss a single minute. By the way, if you screw up on a word, we will also make sure to cut off one of their toes. But anyways, I'm just playing. Duolingo doesn't do any of that. They're a pretty good company. Anyways, I thank you so much for the support and also the pretty funny joke. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support and helping this thing to keep on running.
And we have a super chat from Drone Man, who puts in a $5 super chat and says, thank you for what you're doing and your part in supporting Ukraine.
And thank you for doing your part in supporting us so that we can keep this thing running so we can keep supporting Ukraine. Because without y'all, it wouldn't be possible. And so with that, thank you once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
The next one is from Tony Fleming, who puts in a $5 donation and says, "My group, the 5th, watch when we can."
And thank you so much for the support. And that's actually pretty cool. The apparently he isn't just the Green Berets, and they just watch. You know, that's always so weird to think about, man. We got like people in SpaceX and the Green Berets watching this channel at the same time. Imagine what the Lee Spring Army could do if we could get all of this potential in one area at the same time with unlimited funding. I think the Lee Spring Army could actually do a lot. We could have Space Marines.
We could form a small nation.
We kind of could, yeah. I mean, you know, we're not saying that, but it hypothetically could happen. Also, Dennis Wilson just said, "I'm looking at Wetumpka. I would hate to live here. It looks boring and parochial."
Yes, sir. That is accurate.
Yes, sir. It's a town. It's a town, I tell you. Let me see what the street view looks like. Oh, they hadn't done the sidewalk renovations yet, so the town looked real bad. Oh, man. They really changed a lot. Doesn't change what Wetumpka is. It's not that bad of a town. It's not. It's just that it has some problems that I personally have a thing against. Also, I think the trees around the bridge on this side are gone too now, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think they are.
Yeah, I think they are. Also, this church right over here, the First Presbyterian Church, got completely ripped up in the tornado. Wow, look, man, this is actually before the tornado came. Oh, wait a minute, this is after the tornado came through.
You teleported through time like in one click.
So this is what happened after an EF3 came through Wetumpka. This is what it looked like afterwards. And this church that had stood since the 1830s was completely destroyed. And this is what it looked like before, right over here. So it actually looked really nice before, and then this is what it looks like after. And it looks like a war zone.
I remember when we went out there when that thing had just hit and was helping clean it up. And it was just like, there was people wandering around that were literally like, their home was messed up and they had like literally nowhere to go. They were just walking in circles.
Yeah, I mean, it was terrible. We actually helped to clean up this town after the tornado came through. We volunteered as much as we could. I think we did like 18 hours in 2 days. But it was a lot.
And we had a bunch of other people we got with us to, I was about to say it's OPSEC, but everybody knows we were in JRTC. We got a bunch of other kids from JRTC to come out there and help clean up.
Yeah, I remember the stupidity of some of the stuff that happened then, because you know, well, I don't know if this is an OPSEC thing because, you know, we lived in Wetumpka, but we went to school there too, and that's obviously why we helped to clean up the town, because it was our town. You have a duty to help out your own people. But what was funny is that the tornado hit our town, you know, like it's just like 5 minutes drive from everyone. And then some people were going, wow, we should make care packages like when we go back to school. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's right here. You can go and volunteer. So we volunteered, and then no one else did anything. Like, I think like out of the whole JROTC we're in of like 120 people, only like 8 of us went out there and cleaned up the place. Like, and of course there were thousands of people from the city. Like the whole city came out. It was actually record numbers. No one actually believed it. They actually had to close down the volunteer booths early every day because there were so many volunteers that would go out there and help. But
they brought up some, I think, Air Force from Maxwell, I think, too.
Yeah, and then Governor Ivy came out there, and interestingly enough, I actually showed up in the back of one of the news clips. Like, she was walking through, and I was walking away from the road, and you could see me back there as like a Forrest Gump cameo. It's kind of funny. Anyways, anyways, with that, we're on to the next one instead of going down memory lane.
And the next one goes to James W., who puts in a $10 donation and says, Enforcer, is Belarus going to boot Lukashenko in the aftermath of the war? There was a popular support for his ouster last election.
And if the Russians are gone as a concern after the war, I would say yes. I would think so. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And also, Font Freud once said, Enforcer and Matt, are you doing a fundraiser for Terra Ops on the drone comp on Sunday?
No, we cannot. They are not a registered nonprofit under the GuideStar program, and so we can't run a fundraiser for them, sadly. We can only run through the GuideStar program because that's the only way we ensure that all the funds are accounted for, they're neat and tidy, and everyone has a clear statement from YouTube that those funds will go directly to that fundraiser. If we did that, there's a lot of questionability where people can throw up, hey, what are they really doing with that money? And I don't want anyone to have to question or the validity or the safety of helping to support fundraisers on this channel. So sadly we can't. But there is a fundraiser out there for that. So with that, thank you so much once again for the question, and unfortunately that is our answer. But with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Philip Fixes, who says, it's been a rough week. I feel you on the throat pain. Mine's scratchy AF. Take a second to look up the synopsis of Red Storm Rising. Great book, Slava LSA.
And thank you so much for the support. I will make sure to try and check on that book after the stream. And also, my throat is not really doing that well now at the end of the stream. The cough drops have worn off, and it's not really that good. It doesn't really feel that great, I gotta be honest with you. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And before we move on to the next one, I see some people saying, hey, I was in JROTC. And, you know, and I got to be honest with y'all. JROTC would have been a fun concept if it wasn't for some of the kids in the program. The kids in the program made it hell on earth, but the concept was pretty neat.
Although that's where all the, you know, some of the troubled kids go is JROTC. Me and the Enforcer weren't troubled. We just got into it because we liked the whole military aspect of it. But it turned out it wasn't really as military focused as we thought it was going to be. But we still, I guess you could say I kind of got something out of it. It was interesting, to say the least.
Well, I really liked the cadre. I thought the cadre were neat.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we had really good Army instructor. We had the Army JROTC. I saw some people saying they were in the Marine JROTC. I saw Pack Rat say that.
Yeah, and you know, there were all kinds of JROTCs. I don't know if the Space Force has got JROTCs and ROTCs yet. That'll be cool when they do one day. But you know, it was Army JROTC for us. The cadre were great. Like, you can't really complain about the cadre. They were really cool with some very interesting stories and just really cool people. But the kids in the program were kind of the detractor of it because, you know, and I don't care if you're a troubled kid or anything, you know, because everyone's got their own life and all, but like, these kids would just go out of their way to try and make each other's lives a living hell and create drama. And that was not really what I was there for. I was just there for the interesting aspect of JROTC. And then after a while, we actually found out it was like financial stuff, which was good in its own right. But, you know, it's like I didn't want the hell and everything involved in the background and all the drama. And, you know, and then people got like rank hungry, you know, for ranks that really didn't mean much. And, you know, it's like, oh man, you know, it was a whole deal, honestly. And I actually ended up leaving it in my third year. Matthew stayed the course. But I was at the end of
I remember that one. You remember that one kid like almost got in a fight with me about getting promoted over him?
Yeah, I do.
That was so stupid. Like, looking back at it now, it's like that was like meaningless. Like, all that stuff was meaningless. It felt like important at the time, but you know, when you look at it in retrospect, you're like, why was everybody so uptight about that?
Yeah, and, you know, and then on top of that, like my third year, I was offered the battalion XO position, which is right below the battalion commander, but I was, at that point, I was really tired of dealing with the drama, and then when I heard that one of the people who I thought was just instigating a lot of the drama was going to be over me, you know, and so drama, it was literally going to just be drama from the top down, literally. I was like, I'm not doing this. I was like, I'm just going to quit. So then in my senior year, I just, you know, took random classes. But still, a lot of y'all are talking about, yeah, I took JROTC seriously. I think it would have been cool. I just think that if we had a better group of students that were doing it, it would have been a lot better. And
seriously, too, I got to the top of the heap. I was a lieutenant colonel in there. I became the battalion commander.
Yeah, Matthew still covers that to this day.
Yes.
I ended out being a cadet, little like captain guy running a company. But anyways, we're on to the next one because this is JROTC. It's JROTC. This is the modern day. This is Ukraine. So let's get on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Mr. E30, my favorite car, who says, thank you for all the streams, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt.
And thank you so much for enjoying them, because through your support, we're able to keep this thing running. And if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to run these streams where everyone could enjoy them. So thank you so much for supporting us and helping this thing to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Dupper Bob as well as Dubsy Dapster. Thank you very much to you, Dubsy and Dupper. We appreciate it very much. And that actually is pretty cool, Dubsy and Dubster. But anyways, moving on to our next one, we have a $2 super chat from Uber Khan, who says, what are your thoughts about okra? And it's very good fried.
Delicious. It's good fried. I would say it's not really that great, like boiled, you know? Like I don't like boiled okra. Fried okra though is the bomb. It's so good. I love it. So yes, I love fried okra. So with that, I hope that answers your question fairly well, and we're on to the next one.
Let's see here. And our next one goes to Mark Andre Burnett, who puts in a $1 donation and says, "Together, stronger, muscle arm for Ukraine."
And thank you so much for the support. And also, together, stronger. Wait, that's like Rise of the Planets, the Apes, Matthew, when that ape said, "Apes together strong." Like, that's like that. But I thank you so much for the support. And that is true. I completely agree. And so with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support.
And for our last one, we have a $1 super chat from Christoph Musselman, who does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Christoph, for that support, and we appreciate you very much as well. And that rounds out our super chat questions. So we're moving on to our live chat questions. And up first, we have our Morse code decoders. Rumpel, Stilchin, Mark Hodges, JP's RCs, Sife, and William Jones. They say, Morse code tonight, no message. I couldn't come up with one.
You actually got that correct. I literally just put that. I put a message saying I had no message. So y'all are right. There was no message tonight. So congratulations on deciphering that Morse code message. So that way we knew that. So then we're on to the next one. But y'all have never missed a night. I know Mark Hodges hasn't because he's always been here. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Gregory Pennick, who says, "Make sure your brother covers the bombing of Dnipro." And sadly, we did.
And unfortunately, we did. Very early on in the stream, as a matter of fact. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Brian DeLauro, who says, "Did you know that recently Ingushetia declared independence?"
What's that called again?
Ingushetia.
How do you spell that?
Let's see. I'll put it in the Discord DMs.
The DMs. All right, let's see what we got.
I'm up in your DMs.
Dude, that's what all the frat dudes say. I'm gonna get in her DMs, bro.
That's what Conor McGregor says when he's trash talking. I'm gonna get in your wife's DMs.
So let's see here. So, oh wow, that's trippy. I see the Discord on the other screen. Anyways, so they declared independence. Interesting. I'll have to look into that a little bit. But that.
Oh, wait a minute. Have we been had? I see somebody saying got him.
But that's what it is. It's Ingushetia.
Why is everybody acting like something's up? I know something's up. I feel it.
Oh,
I can't believe Brian would have us like this because he's been so loyal with the questions.
But this is a literal place. Like, it's not like being had. Like, unless if you're gonna call like the name of a place being had. This is a real place. It's spelled the
Although,
same.
have they declared independence?
I don't know. I'd have to look into that. But we'll just take it with a grain of salt for now. Look into it a little bit more later. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to S. Hammond, who says, "Why can Russia still be getting away with all this? Surely NATO is preparing for war with Russia."
NATO is trying to avoid a war with Russia as best as possible because that will end in a nuclear exchange. So with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And we're on to the next one.
The next one goes to Buada, who says, "If Ukraine fired cruise missiles at Russian oil fields, would that be considered attacking military target?"
Yes, it would, because oil is a strategic resource, and so the destruction of strategic resources is considered an act, I guess you could say, part of a war effort, or part of an offensive, or part of a military strategy. So with that, I hope that answers the question fairly well, and we are going to answer 2 more questions from the live chat, and then we're going to round this thing out. So with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from David Murphy, who says, "Enforcer, isn't war about taking real estate? So how is Russia losing if they are in Ukraine taking their land? The deaths are propaganda. No one knows the actual numbers."
Interesting. That almost sounds like a Russian bot question.
Yeah, that sounds like a bot.
Oh, why did you pick it? I'll
just put him in here and I look at him later.
So to answer that question, the reason why the Russians aren't winning is because when you start an offensive war and you claim it'll be won in 3 days to a week and you don't do that, that is losing. That's like saying I'm going to drive my car from here to Albuquerque and your car breaks down halfway to Albuquerque. You never made it. It doesn't matter if you started the trip, you didn't end it. That's like saying, well, how come You know, like, he didn't, like, how come he started off the trip? So what, are you saying he didn't make it to Albuquerque? No, he didn't. He never made it. The car broke down. So that's kind of the same mindset. Also, the deaths aren't really a lie because we usually see a lot of them on film. So, no, not really a lie. So anyways, with that, I hope we answered that question. We're on to the final one of the night. And so with that, who's the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
Right, and that was the most energetic segue into the last one. But Tasman006 says, do you think the British and Ukrainians did a sneaky thing? Do you think they trained the crews already?
I would say probably so. I feel like that's the most logical, considering they've already been sent over for training in the United Kingdom and in the United States. So I feel like they would have already been trained at some point or found a crew that would have been side-tracked to do that. But we're not really sure because we can never get exact details on that kind of stuff. But with that, I hope that does address the question at least fairly well. And we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I thank you all so much once again for watching. If y'all did enjoy, please make sure to hit the thumbs up. Make sure to click the subscribe button, and also make sure to comment once this becomes a video, because once this live stream turns into a video, and you can just watch it on our YouTube channel, commenting on it lets YouTube know that y'all really liked it, and more people ought to look at it, because apparently it's something to talk about. So with that, we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the war in Ukraine, and to also run our Sunday fundraiser before our Monday break, which I go to college on, so is it really a break? I don't know. But with that, I will see you all around, and thank you all once again for watching. Good night, take care, good luck, and Slava Ukraini!
Slava Ukraine!
Yes.
The Leaf Street Army sends its regards.
Ще не вмерла України ні слава, ні воля. Ще нам, браття українці, усміхнеться доля. Згинуть наші вороженьки, як роса на сонці. Запануємо ми, браття, у своїй сторонці. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу і покажем, що ми браття козацького роду. Душу й тіло ми положим за нашу свободу.